across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And yes, good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. So we've got a shed load of delights at this end, including the Home Office releasing almost Trump-style raid videos as it boasts 19,000 migrants have been removed since Labour came to power. Opposition MPs argue it's still not enough. They ain't believing any of it. Have Labour finally solved the immigration problem? We'll look at that in more detail in a few moments. Also this afternoon, a transgender NHS doctor who got changed in front of women colleagues has claimed to be a biological female, arguing sex has no defined or agreed meaning in science. This is a doctor saying this. You don't know about the chromosome thing, Doc? I'm surprised. We'll have more on that a little later. And Donald Trump has set Saturday at noon as a deadline for all remaining Israeli hostages to be released by Hamas, warning all hell is going to break loose. Details to come. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Here's a question I didn't imagine I would be asking. Will Labour be the surprise solution to immigration? No, just listen, I know you're spitting your coffee out and choking on your Mr. Kipling's pie during the lunch break here. A serious question. Will Labour be the surprise solution to immigration? I ask this question for one very good reason. And I'm merely asking the question, by the way, I'm not advocating the position. Nearly 19,000 failed asylum seekers, foreign criminals and other immigration offenders have been returned since Labour came to power. Africa, Asia, Europe, South America, following a major escalation in immigration enforcement by the Home Office. By redeploying 1,000 staff to work specifically on immigration enforcement, this has sent out a big message. The klaxons have gone off down there at illegal immigrant HQ. And folk are going, oh my God, the socialists are coming for us. Between the 5th of July last year and 31st of January this year, enforced returns were up 24%. Removal of foreign national offenders up 21%. Illegal working raids up 38% compared to the same period 12 months prior. So these figures represent the highest rate of returns seen in the UK for 3/4 of a decade. They also include the 4 biggest return charter flights in UK's history, a total of 840 people on board. And as part of all of that, you will have seen the Trump-like videos that have accompanied those kind of raids, people being escorted onto aeroplanes, handcuffed, removed, taken out, dispatched from the UK back to where they are originally from. Now, of course, reform, this is Reform's territory. Reform have said they're not having any of this. Nigel Farage has blasted the Home Office after it boasted about this clampdown, saying it is feeble. Feeble, said Nige. He said with an estimated 600,000 illegals in London alone, these numbers are feeble. So there's quite a lot have gone back at work in progress, not enough. Serious question here. Will Labour be the surprise solution to immigration? Couple of reasons for this. If you look at the state in the United States, we've often had a curious situation. I think I'm right on these figures, that the last Obama administration deported more illegal immigrants than the subsequent Trump administration, which took place in 2016, of course. So more people went under Obama than under Trump. Now, I know people will slice the figures in different ways and have different ideas as to how that figure was arrived at. But what often happens, and this is a good thing, is that those parties on the left, and OK, Biden and Harris might have been massively on the left. I'm not sure about Obama and Clinton. I think they were probably to the right of most Conservatives over here, put it that way. They got tough on that kind of stuff. They never stopped bombing countries when they were in power, something Trump actually didn't do. We were talking about this in the office a little earlier. They signed off the death warrants for those bad guys on death row. I mean, Clinton couldn't get out of bed in the morning unless he'd killed somebody, either via a bomb or via signing a death warrant. So what often and can happen is, because the left are so scared witless of their ineptitude, and because we have Keir Starmer doing absolutely nothing about channel crossings, just like his Tory predecessors, the word on the street is they're upping their game elsewhere. So we might actually get more success out of Labour than we got out of the Tories. Now, these are, as Nigel Farage points out, definitely small numbers set against the big amount. We're also talking about illegals, and again, you have to get down to the full definition of illegal. Most of those people coming across the channel would be seen by most people as illegal, but of course the minute you claim asylum, you cease to be illegal, and there's the conundrum. So you're no longer illegal when you come in. So that's not included in this list, unless after a protracted interview process, probably lasting years, you eventually get kicked out. But that is the figure so far. Let me just run those over you again. Nearly 19,000 failed asylum seekers, foreign criminals and other immigration offenders have been returned since Labour came to power. Will the Labour Party be the surprise solution to immigration? Because remember, and we talked about this yesterday, come the next election, the battle on their hand will not just be with the Tories, it will be with Reform UK. In some seats, that will be a more pressing problem for Labour than the Tories, Reform UK. What they need to do between now and 2029 and go, well, what are you going to do, Reform? Look what we've done. By the time we get to that stage, based on these kind of figures, we'll be in a situation where Labour will be able to say, we've deported 500,000 people. It's never been known. So will Labour be the surprise solution to immigration? Or are they going to do this and then just go, that's it, job done now. We've got the videos, Yvette's happy. That's a wrap, everybody. We're done on this one. 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open now. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Fraser Myers is with us, deputy editor at Spiked Online. Fraser, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Always good. Yeah, good. Always good to have you with us. I mean, these are big numbers that the Home Office are essentially bragging about. I think we can reasonably say that. They've got the videos to show, high production editing, lots of snips and clips of people getting arrested, cuffed, put onto an aeroplane. They want the world to know they are tough on immigration. And by the way, I'm bound to say this, Fraser, if you didn't believe how tough they are, it's worth reminding ourselves of what Keir Starmer has said about how he also plans to continue stopping immigration. Have a listen.
You will have helped to smash the gangs, secure our borders, and save countless lives. Smash the criminal gangs, and they are criminal gangs, that are running this vile trade and putting people in the boats. Take those gangs down. I think smashing the gangs that are taking people's money is a deterrent. I think you have to smash those gangs. The only way to stop that is to smash the gangs that are running this vile trade. Smash the gangs.
I don't know if you caught that, Fraser, but he wants to smash the gangs, apparently. That's his big thing, of course, smashing the gangs. But he might say, look at the good work we've done so far.
Well, it's clear that the number of deportations has gone up, and surely the Home Office deserves some credit for that. But the fact is that 19,000 removals is less than the 25,000 people who arrived on a small boat in exactly the same time.
Yep.
So removals are going up, yes, but so are the number of arrivals. And in other areas, you see potentially Labour will lose their footing on this, because you've had Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, saying he will never challenge any rulings by the European Court of Human Rights, which is basically allowing essentially possibly some quite bogus appeals to be upheld for people who have what we would consider to be terrible or non-existent asylum claims to be able to stay in. Often criminals are allowed to stay on sometimes often the most dubious terms. You'll have been covering, I'm sure, this week the chicken nuggets case. The criminal who
it's the best.
It's the criminal who, to remind people, the criminal who, the Albanian criminal who couldn't be deported because his son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets.
Doesn't like the
Recently,
nuggets.
we heard about a Jamaican drug dealer who couldn't be deported because his daughter is struggling with his gender. Doesn't live with his daughter, but apparently he's the only one that she trusts to talk about these issues. These are the kinds of things that our courts are buying. I don't see any indication that Starmer is interested in challenging any of that. And so, you know, and that's at the criminal end, right? Those are the people who should be prioritized for deportation. It's also worth stressing that most deportations are voluntary. People get paid sometimes around £3,000 to assist them in leaving. So it's only actually a tiny number of deportations that they're showing that, you know, people being put in handcuffs.
Sure.
That's a small proportion of the people. But
why did they want those videos out there? That was the kind of game changer of this story, because, you know, I can remember when, you know, once in a while a Home Secretary, Priti Patel, I think Suella Braverman, you know, they go out with the police on an immigration raid. It's a nail bar or a takeaway or a two-bedroom flat that's got 84 people living in it, those kind of things. So often they're condemned for almost making political capital out of the misery of some people's disposition, regardless of what we think of immigration. But here's Labour doing exactly, unashamedly saying, you know, we've got the editing boys in. They would have, you know, employed a company to put these glossy videos together. They're waving the flag of this. Now, I would assume, Fraser, this is all about trying to steal the march from Reform UK, maybe a bit early. There's not an election for a while, but would that be their thinking? They're tough on immigration and they're doing exactly what UKIP say they, or Reform UK say they would do.
Almost certainly. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to trust Labour more than Reform on immigration, but they can at least try to neutralise the issue. And yeah, there has been some complaints from the left. You know, the Guardian has called this, called them video nasties. But actually, if you go back to New Labour, many of the Home Secretaries would do this kind of thing all the time. It wasn't just a sort of Tory PR stunt. Actually, listening to some of their Home Secretaries back then, you'd think that they were to the right of Suella Braverman sometimes. You know, the rhetoric's very strong. I mean, you played the clip of Keir Starmer talking about smashing the gangs. He never gives any indication that he's on board with illegal migration, but perhaps the videos are necessary to make people believe that they're actually doing something, that something's done, because we simply don't trust Labour on this.
Yeah.
In terms of the left in general, I mean, it is actually quite a new thing that the left has suddenly become in favour of all forms of migration, including illegal migration. You mentioned Obama. I think it's actually true to say that Obama didn't just deport more than Trump, but his government deported, I think, more than every other previous president combined in history. Wow. So the squeamishness around immigration is relatively new. It used to be the case that the Labour Party in the 1970s was against immigration purely because they saw migration as lowering wages. You know, they wanted to keep wages high for working class people. This is relatively new. I mean, people may remember Ed Miliband with the controls on immigration mug in the 2015 election. That caused howls of protest among some on the left, but it was still the mainstream Labour Party position that we need to get control of this. So I think it's entirely possible for the left to take this issue if it rediscovers what it used to think, if it jettisons some of its newer identity politics. You can see in Europe, the Danish Social Democrats. Denmark is the only country in Europe that doesn't really have a rising populist right or far right, because the Social Democrats in power have really taken charge of this issue. They've really cracked down on it, and people are seeing results. They're seeing that their country is not changing in the way that their neighbours are. So it can be done. I don't think Keir Starmer has the bottle to seize the initiative as such on this. I think he just wants to neutralise the issue, wants to lower its salience in the public mind, rather than actually deal with immigration. But it is possible for the left to make this.
But indeed, and you correctly pointed out there, Fraser, lots of precedent, both in this country and what is going on. You mentioned correctly Denmark there as well, who've had an incredible success without there being a government that you might imagine would have this in their DNA. We'll watch this space with this one, because I guess for it to fully work, Labour have got to keep up that momentum for the remainder of the time in office. So maybe we'll get a video every week. Perhaps they'll play it after the news at 10, who knows. Let's move to this story. There is a connection and a correlation to the last one. Kemi Badenoch firmly rejecting the idea of a pact with Reform UK, dismissing it as, quote, for the birds, also warning that it could alienate Tory voters. Both of them, perhaps. With Reform now neck and neck with Labour in the polls, here's what Kemi Badenoch had to say about the prospects of working with Nigel Farage. Let's have a listen.
Nigel Farage has said that he wants to destroy the Conservative Party. I can't just treat it like it's a toy and have pacts and mergers. If you get into bed with Farage, you know, heaven forbid the image. We are done with your party.
I have to say, I didn't have that image until she raised it, Fraser, but that's a whole other part of the story. I don't want to think about that either. Yesterday, Farage said a similar thing. You know, we got no chance of doing that. We did a lot of calls yesterday from people, mostly former Tories, who became Reform UK supporters, who are incredible. I was really surprised, even doing this for a living, how many people were calling up saying, I've joined Reform UK. If they so much as are seen in the same room as a Tory, I will tear up my membership card. The feeling is very, very strong. And people clearly disappointed, feeling let down with the Conservatives. So it's possible that Kemi Badenoch won't get a chance to do a deal, even if somebody did ask her.
Well, yeah, you do think, looking at the polls, who's the one who should be reaching out to the other? You know, yeah. Why would Nigel Farage want to do a deal with Kemi Badenoch is probably the question that should be asked. I feel sorry for Kemi. She is having to weather the worst Tory defeat in modern history, essentially. The party is in such a state, people feel so betrayed by it that almost nothing she says is getting a kind of hearing. So she is in that unfortunate position. And I think, yeah, I'm not surprised, actually, by the sense of betrayal that many listeners have. You know, the Conservatives, especially on the question of immigration that we were talking about, said one thing and then did precisely the opposite. If they'd have said, you know, they could have at least made some arguments as to why they let in so many people. I think that it was probably a panic after COVID when there were major labour shortages, but no one has ever really accounted for why that happened. Yeah. You know, genuinely, yeah, the Tories, in a way, the Tories are now the more toxic brand, I suppose, is the
Sure, yeah,
the
absolutely.
issue.
And it's interesting. I said to a lot of the people that called yesterday, you know, I mean, this idea that not only did they not want a pact, they were very animated about the idea there could be any sort of dialogue. This is a party that half an hour ago was the most successful political party in modern history. And here they are, not just person non grata, but toxic as far as many of the electorate are concerned.
Yeah, and people used to talk about, you know, Nigel Farage having a sort of ceiling of support. You know, only about 20% of the electorate will vote for him. That ceiling keeps rising and rising. Is it, you know, the Tories, where do they stand? She seems to be worried that they'll lose more voters perhaps to the Lib Dems, which is a real possibility. You know, there are many people who voted Tory who probably are not Reform supporters, who are probably not as far to the right as that. But are they the majority? I think it's actually, if you look at, you know, what happened in the last election, Tory vote went from 14 million roughly in 2019 to 7 million. You know, they halved their vote share. The vast majority of them staying at home or going to Reform, not defecting leftwards. So I'm not sure. It seems as if it is the Conservatives that are more toxic to Reform supporters than vice versa.
Fraser, stay with us. Fraser Myers with us, Deputy Editor over there at Spiked Online. We'll have more to come. I want to ask you, by the way, we're asking the question as to whether you think Labour could actually solve the immigration problem. I mean, it seems unthinkable. Could it be? Could they do an Obama, as Fraser was saying there, and actually turn it around? I'm also going to ask the sort of reverse of the question we threw out yesterday. If you're a Reform voter and don't want anything to do with the Tories. If you're still a Tory voter, how do you feel about doing business with Reform UK? And also, we're going to come to the I'm biologically female trans doctor who says, no, I am biologically female. Spoiler alert, you're not. You deserve respect, but not sure that extends to getting changed in front of women. We'll have more on that as well. 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
I know what you're going to say, yeah.
Labour has just suspended Burnley MP Oliver Ryan, the party, over his membership of that WhatsApp group that contained offensive comments. The comments were homophobic, misogynistic, racist and anti-Semitic as well. Your response to that quickly, Harry?
I think, you know, he was sort of in trouble from the moment he woke up this morning. I think this was a matter of time, and right on cue, just as the papers are starting to file for deadline, Labour have moved.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk. It's 1. Lots to get through. Fraser Myers is with us from Spiked Online. Let's move to this story, Fraser. The transgender NHS doctor at the centre of a controversial tribunal has claimed to be a biological female, sparking debate, of course, over the use of female-only spaces in the health service, with tensions rising over such cases. Let's have a little listen to Health Secretary Wes Streeting speaking about his determination to stop NHS wokery more generally.
They also need the profession to help. And sometimes there are some really daft things being done in the name of equality, diversity and inclusion, which undermine the cause. For example, there was one member of NHS staff who was merrily tweeting a job ad online and saying part of her practice was anti-whiteness. And I just thought, what the hell does that say to the bloke up in Wigan who's more likely to die, earlier than his more affluent white counterparts down in London? We've got real issues of inequality that affect white working class people.
Well, there it is. That's Wes Streeting. I don't know where he would stand on this specific issue, but it's found its way into tribunal territory, Fraser. But I think the one thing, and we can all agree on, whatever our views are on changing rooms, is that this is not a biological female.
Yeah, biological sex is real, even if some doctors seemingly don't believe in it. Listening to the tribunal, the doctor seems to make this argument that because he is biological, a biological being, not a robot, I wouldn't contest that, but identifies as female, therefore is biologically female, which, it's an interesting sort of logic word game. But let's be honest, trans women are biological males, and nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in being a biological male.
Sure.
Some of my best friends are biological males. But I think what this shows is that this is a really, really, trans ideology is a completely bizarre, niche and crazy idea, yet it has wormed its way into just about every institution imaginable, including the health service, including an area where I'm afraid biology is at a premium. There is no escaping biology in the world of medicine. So it's extraordinary. And this level of obfuscation you hear, that there's no agreed definition of sex. I mean, it's completely absurd. It wouldn't matter in a way if it wasn't for the fact that it is, overriding common sense in so many other domains. So you have this doctor who, really should not be in a women's changing room, has made a nurse feel extremely uncomfortable about this. That ought to be the end of the matter. The fact that this nurse feels uncomfortable, the fact that we're talking about biological male, that common sense would dictate that, that's not an appropriate place to change.
Where does this doctor change? That would be another way to look at it, I suppose, because the doctor, Beth Upton, would say, well, I clearly can't go in a male changing room. I don't know anything about the anatomical details of Beth Upton, or whether a changing room to put your scrubs on, if that is what we're talking about here, whether it would even matter in that respect. You're not going swimming, I'm assuming that. But nonetheless, Beth Upton would say, well, where am I supposed to change? Because I can't go in a bloke's changing room.
Yeah, and we will need to make accommodations for those things, but clearly the place is not the women's changing room. And I felt incredibly sorry for this nurse, because in order to justify her position, she has had to tell the tribunal about her previous experiences of sexual assault. Women shouldn't have to detail those private pieces of information just in order to have a single sex space.
100%.
That has to be the bottom line.
Well,
and we're not against accommodating transgender people or finding, we can find sensible solutions to this, but it can't be in the women's changing room.
Yeah. Well, maybe there'll be some assistance from the new health minister, Ashley Dalton, because Ashley Dalton's mind and thinking and political philosophy seems to encompass a lot of the kind of madness we've gone through. She was criticised for past comments supporting self-identification, including people, if they want to, could identify as a llama. She previously suggested people with male anatomy could be women if they identify as female. I mean, it's that sort of ludicrous, casual way that somebody will interpret this debate, which is, ultimately about the human journey, procreation, male, female, gender, etc. Where someone will just casually go, yeah, anyone can be a bloke, anyone can be a woman. She's now the new health minister. And it sounds like a nut job, frankly.
Replacing Andrew Gwynn, who was sacked for his racist and sexist messages. So
he was just a pest on the phone. She's in a whole different stratosphere, it seems, of nonsense.
It seems that way, and it seems that she seems to have been so down the rabbit hole of trans ideology, where people have come to genuinely believe that simply identifying as a woman is enough to make a man a woman. She believes that if you identify as an animal, that makes you an animal. Or even if she doesn't believe that, she at least said that if someone said to her that they identified as a llama, then they should be taken seriously and they should be treated with dignity and respect. Dignity, fair enough.
At a zoo,
but respect,
or what? I don't know what.
Exactly, yeah. Can you let such people into your buildings and things like that? I mean, it just shows that Labour has really tried to put on a moderate face on this issue. Wes Streeting seems fairly sensible on these questions. He's continued the ban on puberty blockers. We've just heard from the Sunday Times this weekend that Labour is dropping plans to introduce self-identification. Yeah. But stories like this are a reminder that deep down, a lot of Labour higher-ups do have some quite crazy views on gender. And, let's not forget, Keir Starmer himself said that it's wrong to say that only women have cervixes, that perhaps 1 in 1,000 women might have a penis. We have Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary, that said that, yes, male rapists should be in women's prisons. We had the former equalities minister, shadow equalities minister, I should say, Dawn Butler, suggest that babies are born without a biological sex. So this way of thinking is deeply embedded in the party, and it's going to take a lot to weed it out.
Indeed, yeah. These people are mad, frankly. Listen, Fraser, thank you. The voice of sanity, I should add. Fraser Myers is deputy editor over there at Spiked Online. Thank you to him. In a moment, we're going to talk to Claire Pearsall, former government advisor on immigration. Dan Barker's joining us as well from Reform UK. We'll chat to those guys and get a view on these latest figures that Labour are trumpeting. Very, very happy Labour. Look, 19,000 people we've kicked out of the country. Should be said, as Fraser mentioned there, not everybody was caught against their will. Some people volunteer to leave the country because they know the game's over. They can't last any longer. If Labour kept that up and 40 or 50,000 people a year were deported, would you begin to go, do you know what, I think Labour have... I mean, I don't believe a word of it because it's not in their DNA, right? It's just not in Labour's... It's not in their thinking, their ideas they don't recognise this kind of thing as a problem. But even if they don't, but they're saying, well, just to appease the gallery... I tell you what, Keir, it's a big old gallery you got out there, mate. We'll have some detail in a few moments. Your calls as well on that point. If you are a Tory and would never get into bed with Reform UK, the kind of opposite way we looked at this from yesterday, details on that. Where should the NHS doctor who identifies as being female and says she is biologically female, even though she demonstrably is not a biological female, where does that person... not specifically that person, but anyone in that position, where do they get changed? 0344 499 1000. And by the way, it is not for women to be forced to answer that question. That women do not have to go, well, where should they get changed? No, you can decide that, work it out, that's fine. But it's not for women to come up with a solution as to why men should not be in their changing rooms. Simple as that. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 25 to 2. Comments coming in from you as well. We'll bring you more of those throughout the course of the programme too. Let's continue then on this interesting, fascinating, unprecedented position from the Labour Party, who appear to have solved the problem of immigration. Not really. The Home Office says almost 19,000 migrants have been removed from the UK since Labour took office in July. This is an increase on anything that happened before then, they say. Since 2018, it's not been as incredible as this. Downing Street even released video footage in a sort of Trump-like boast showing the journey of a migrant from arrest to deportation. Nigel Farage has described it as feeble compared to estimated illegal migrant numbers. In a moment, we'll speak to Dan Barker from Reform UK. Claire Pearsall first, former government special advisor on immigration. Afternoon to you, Claire.
Hi, afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. So listen, when you were in the Home Office and this would come up, I mean, what was it? Was it a kind of an eyes roll moment? Oh, here we go again. It's the unfathomable immigration conundrum, the Gordian knot of contemporary politics. No one can solve it. Nobody knows what to do. What was the deal? What was it like? What was the mood music in the average immigration meeting over there at Home Office HQ?
Every single day was one of those sort of chaos days. You would get in the morning and you'd want to put your head in your hands in about 10 minutes. It was always an inevitable point that came up was, what do we do about the levels of migration into the United Kingdom? Now, bear in mind, I was there in 2018 and 2019. We didn't have the level of small boats. I think we did our pieces when we reached the dizzy heights of 200 people coming across. But we did have issues with lorries, people being shoved into the back of those, into container ships. So that problem has never, ever gone away. But I think that what you're looking at with the Labour government is rank hypocrisy, given that every time we had a deportation flight looking to take off, every single representation against it was from a Labour MP. We would have endless communications coming across from Labour MPs, including Sir Keir Starmer, Diane Abbott, Angela Rayner, and you would never get anything off the ground. So it is just absolutely amazing that they can trumpet this as some kind of success when they have voted against every single Conservative immigration policy in existence.
But they'll still say, Claire, because you're absolutely correct, that, well, these figures are higher than the year before, which the last time we looked, the Tories were in charge. So we're doing better, believe it or not, than the Conservatives.
Because they're picking the countries that they're returning people to, which is in fact easier to do so. If you look at the countries they've returned to, Brazil, Albania, France, those are relatively simple countries to return people who have overstayed a visa or people that have been here with no right to remain. You can easily find them and put them on a flight to go home. Most people go voluntarily, especially when you look at the numbers returning to Albania. And that's not to forget that the UK government will also pay them £3,000 to return home. So it's not quite as they're suggesting. When you look at the amount of people that have come across the channel, for example, last year that was 36,000, and the top countries are Afghanistan, Sudan, Eritrea, and Iran. You're not going to return to those countries. You have no agreement to do so. So I think they're being really disingenuous when they say that this is the start of solving the problem.
Yeah. If they kept up that momentum to the tune of 50,000 deportations a year, I mean, is that going to give the Conservative front bench the wobbles? And would it give Reform UK a run for their money?
If, and it's a really big word, if they were able to do that, then yeah, absolutely. We all have to sit there and say that they have succeeded where we have failed, and Reform would have to put across that this is what they want. But It isn't going to happen. Under no circumstances are they going to be able to remove that many people when you don't have agreements in the countries that most of these people are coming from. So I find this is all very much a sort of show and tell aspect of Labour. Look how tough we are. Aren't we great? Let's nick something from the Trump playbook to make ourselves look really good and strong. But realistically, they've got no policies to back it up, and I don't think they've actually got the will to carry it through.
There it is, Claire. Thank you, Claire Pearsall, former government special advisor on immigration. Let's go to work from Dan Barker, spokesperson for Reform UK. Afternoon to you, Dan. I mean, I put at the tail end there that point to Claire. I mean, is this going to hoover up that sacred territory that Reform UK have gained so much support? Are Labour about to steal your colours?
No, they're not going to steer our clothes. I mean, don't be fooled. This is pure propaganda. You know, 19,000, although they're doing a lot more than the Tories, because the Tories had given up on immigration in any form or any way. It is a drop in the ocean. And, you know, look at 5 people escorting a single migrant onto the steps of an aircraft. I mean, how much is that costing?
Sure.
You know, we need to scale this up, and we need to make it cheaper and quicker, and we need to get these people out of the UK much faster.
It's often said that every Home Secretary enters that office and they think, Dan, that, you know, I've got the solution. And then when they get in there, somebody goes, no, you can't. You really can't just do that. You think you can. And even if you want to, it's going to take time. It's going to take more recruitment. It's going to take a protracted legal process. So what might look like the simplest thing in the world, well, how hard can it be? Look, over there's a hotel full of people that shouldn't be here. Go there, arrest everyone, and send them back to the country of origin. That sounds simple. Apparently, in reality, it's anything but.
Well, I think you've got to look, the legal framework is a good place to start, because I think whilst we are still signatories to the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, we are always going to fall foul. I mean, recently in the paper, there was the Albanian who couldn't be deported because his son didn't like the chicken nuggets that would be served in Albania.
It's a very, very important reason. You have to agree, Dan, isn't it?
It is. I mean,
who's not discerning about their nuggets?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they've got McDonald's in Albania. You know, they're good enough for me.
Yeah. Can I just tell you a little factoid, actually? Do you know the weirdest thing about what you've just said? Apparently, they don't have any McDonald's in Albania. Did you know?
Really?
We didn't know this until yesterday. But they do have loads of places that sell chicken nuggets. So the same point stands. Anyway.
Learned something today.
I don't know why they don't, by the way. Do you sense, though... Go on, you carry on. The other one...
The Pakistani paedophile who's escaped deportation...
I mean, that's
because
beyond...
it would hurt his children. I mean, you couldn't write this stuff, could you?
Why would he be anywhere near his own kids? I mean, the man's a paedophile, for God's sake. He's a sex offender. He's interested in children. And that was used as it could affect his rights for his own kids. And there was
family life,
a fella that couldn't be sent to a Caribbean island because apparently the weather's too hot. It might upset him because of the weather. I mean, we've got all these kind of lame excuses. Well, I find it bizarre that any judge in this country would even go near it. Even if the judge said, as a kind of caveat, look, I know this is BS, but I've got to implement the law. I could just about get that. But some of those judges appear to endorse it.
Well, the thing is, Ian, I mean, Article 8 under the European Court of Human Rights is actually a new article that's come about during the life of the court since it was founded. So there's activist judges creating new legislation. This whole thing about family life, right to family life, it's interpreted so broadly. And then we've got, in the UK, we've got a cottage industry of human rights lawyers who are just, got their snouts in the trough, chief of which is now the Attorney General, who's giving away, the architect behind the Chagos betrayal, and a number of other things that are going on. So, we've been stitched up for decades by the left-wing establishment, and, reform will sort this out. Common sense will prevail.
And common sense will prevail. That is what I think, the growing number of people joining Reform are sensing. We will watch with interest whether Labour keep up this momentum, though. Dan, I mean, if they kept it up at this rate for the next 5 years, would the picture look rather different? Would we be going, hang on a second, right, they're not really the people that you'd think would solve this, but they seem to be doing all right.
I suspect what they're doing at the moment is it's the low-hanging fruit, as I think your previous caller said, the ones where there's easier to deport, countries that will receive them more readily because they're kind of, they're easier to work with.
Yep.
I think you look at the figures for London, 600,000, 1.2 million for the UK.
Yep.
I mean, and most of these people have overstayed. It's not the 150,000 that have come over in the boat since 2018.
Yep.
But, if someone comes here and overstays their visa, the work visa, so they came here legitimately.
That's a big one, isn't it? The overstaying is a huge problem.
They should be just, picked up and taken to the airport and removed. I mean, we've got to send a message to people. If you want to break the law here, you can't stay. And
it should be a very swift process. Listen, Dan, great to have you on. We will speak again, I hope. Dan Barker is a spokesperson for Reform UK. Antoine de Webb, who I think has completely missed the point, says, Ian, can you, for once, do some actual research and stop parroting the Labour spin? Actually delve into the numbers and stop looking lazy, for goodness sake. Most are volunteers, and forced deportations is what we should be looking at. Right now you look amateur. Antoine, mate, we do know that. We are slightly taking the piddle here out of Labour's position of the saviours of immigration. I did say at the very beginning, by the way, the point that Antoine makes, most are volunteers. I think 3,500 of the 19,000 or the 18,500 were people who voluntarily decided to go back. But we have made that point 4 times in this hour, and we've only been on air 45 minutes, for God's sake. Labour are claiming a victory on this. Hence, Antoine, can you see my tongue in my flipping cheek? You nut job. Yes, they are saying we are the party of strict laws immigration. That's why we played the Smash the Gangs montage and took the piddle out of Keir Starmer yet again, and just spoke to Dan from Reform to shine some light. So there you go. I hope that helps Antoine de Webb, clearly not a real name, out of a stew. This one from Don, who says, the problem with self-identification, this is back to the issue of the doctor that said, I am a woman, genetically a woman. The real problem with identification is the cost. Imagine having to provide stables for llamas and horses and litter trays in toilets for cats. Where will it end? That's a good one. The new health minister says you can identify as a flipping llama if you want to. Andy says, Andy's in Surrey, would a llama be able to take a driving test or travel on a tube or a bus? Presumably, they would temporarily identify as human beings on these occasions. That's what would happen, wouldn't it? Identify as a llama, but a llama that identifies as a human being. There will be some mucked up people that think that kind of tribe. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
when you look at the number of rapes that are being reported, it's hugely gone up. To make these points in the toxic environment we now live in, you've got to give people data. So they can't turn around and go, you're making this up because you hate brown people, you're making this up because you're a xenophobe, you're making this up because you're an Islamophobe. You need to actually say to people, here are the statistics. The Telegraph did a fantastic story where they had used prison population data from the year before. The only data available, women and girls are far less safe in Europe now as a direct consequence of mass immigration, and we have provided the evidence.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This one from Alan in Nottingham. All politicians get paid well to do very little in most cases, make excuses, hide behind bureaucracy, and then move on with no accountability. The system is broken, and if there is no real accountability, elections to date have not offered a real option for this country, with vague manifestos and petty blame culture persisting. Reform is the only option on the horizon now, but the jury is out as to whether they can and will provide a solution. Let's go to Ben in Essex on that issue of immigration. Who would have thought it, Ben? The saviours of the day turn out to be the old socialists.
Can you hear me, Ian?
Loud and clear, Ben. What's going on?
Yeah, no, I think this immigration, I think this move by Labour is all optics. It's for them to just have a little bit of bragging rights in Parliament questions and this smash the gangs. I mean, this is clearly an issue. This is an emergency. You know, whatever. I want to see Chinooks flying across the coast. The Royal Navy, get them tough on this. I mean, you've got all these immigration officers putting one person on the plane. We should be doing that every minute of every day.
If somebody wanted to, they could do.
He could push the button now.
Yeah, 100%. If somebody really wanted to, they could do.
They could do. We've got, resources, the army. This is all political bureaucracy, optics, He's thinking, he obviously feels threatened, knows this is a hot topic. He said, look, let's give him a little bit, let's show that we're doing something. There's so much more needs to be done on this because, when someone gets killed or someone's daughter or whatever the input, an economic issue, this is where it will start mattering. We should have Chinooks flying up and down the coast. We're going to smash the gangs. We need to be tough.
I mean, the smash the gang thing is just a massive red herring from Starmer. I mean, everybody wants to smash the gangs. What about the cold face of the problem? People literally floating across the channel on a daily basis in their thousands. I mean, surely someone apparently can't sort that?
I mean, we're weak, Ian. We're looking weak, and this European Human Rights Court, I mean, it's pathetic. That chicken nugget scenario is pathetic. It's laughable. And if you're going to smash the games, you can't be seen to be doing stuff like that. And the British public are sick and tired of our country looking pathetic, looking weak. Yeah. And you're right with saying he could push the button, and we should have army, we should have all the resources dealing with this problem.
This is the bit that they haven't got their head around, and they scratch their head and go, what's all this reform stuff? Why are they so popular in the polls? Why did Donald Trump get elected? It's this, right? It's this. It's the doctor 100%. In the changing room. It's the nonsense. It's the stuff that just goes completely against common sense, right? Stuff that if you and I were in a pub having a pint, Ben, which I'm sure would be an amazing evening, by the way, but, a couple of other characters we bump into, all of us would think this, right? Most sane people would think this. But the political class can't get their head around that.
It's nonsense. I don't know what's going on, but we're a country of values. We've got a monarch, and it needs to be protected, and we need to be tough. And it might not be a nice job, Ian, but it's necessary, and
Listen,
we haven't got the right leadership.
I'm the first to say, look, we'll help you out if someone's about to blow you up and your family in a terrible country. We've got a great track record on helping genuine people. Nobody would say otherwise. And there's many ways you can do that, by the way. You don't have to necessarily have somebody come here or to another country. Lots of ways on site you can do that, but in extreme circumstances, Ukraine, Hong Kong, all sorts of other areas, Afghanistan, we are there to help. We've got a great history of it. But what we don't want is people taking the piddle. And you know what? If I was living in Eritrea right now, Ben, I'd give it a go, wouldn't you? If I thought, wow, I could change my life, just jump on a boat for $2.5 grand, I'd give it a go.
Well, exactly that, and it comes down to it's that bullying scenario, isn't it? If you've got someone that's vulnerable that you can pick on, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And we can't have that in this country because our lives and our generation will be ruined, and that's what's worrying me. And I dread to think what this country will look like. How things are.
We've lost. You're spot on. We've lost a kind of rudder, a sense of identity. Even the French, for all of their strange shenanigans, they've always held on to the very proud to be French. There's always been a kind of bind that has. Whatever's gone on, however wacky or mad their governments are, and they've got a complete crackerjack situation over there at the moment, but they've managed to still retain somehow that sense of identity and purpose. They like being French, and I think we're in danger of sort of losing that a little bit. Ben, great call, thank you. Chloe in Hampshire says, immigration, all that's happened is that Labour have deported the lowest hanging fruit and the ones already in the system when they took office. Good point. There's also a good number of voluntary deportations as well, where I think you can get paid for that. Chloe says $3 grand to each person. Their new borders bill will also make gaining citizenship much easier so they can hide the numbers. Yeah, because if you hide the numbers, if you make somebody a citizen, they cease to be an illegal immigrant. So when you count the numbers, how many illegal immigrants here? Oh, hang on a sec. 1, 2, 7. Seven illegal immigrants in the whole of the UK. Yeah, what about the other million? Oh no, did you not hear? They're all citizens now. Made them citizens of the UK. Right, OK. So we've only got 7 illegals. Yeah, 7 illegals. Now, isn't that fantastic? Because we made the others citizens, so no longer can't make it up. Darren in Cambridgeshire says, regarding the deportation, Labour are only showing those that are volunteering to leave with cash. It's the taxpayer that pays the flights. And even the ones that didn't, I think 3 or 4,000 that were voluntary out of that group, as Chloe said, were earmarked to go. They weren't suddenly identified by Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper. Darren says, just look at the amount of hotels they are opening to house all of those entering the UK illegally. And what about the councils that are wasting millions? Keep up the great work. Cracking point from Darren. I mean, that would be, take over a load of hotels in your town. Can't stay there anymore. Why? It's full of... I mean, you don't have to be left-wing or right-wing to work out the insanity of that, do you? This is common sense stuff, kids, but doesn't play much of a role down there at Westminster these days. Our lines remain open, 03444 499 1000. Will Labour be the surprising solution to immigration? All of that and more coming up on the other side of the news at 2, which is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. Welcome back to the home of common sense. So the Home Office have released these Trump-style raids, videos boasting of their 19,000 migrants removed since Labour came to power. But opposition MPs say it's still not enough, and there is some suspicion in their numbers. But we are asking the question, and apparently I'm told I have to qualify this, slightly tongue-in-cheek, will Labour be the surprise solution to immigration? Can you trust the Reds? Will the socialists do it like Obama did it in the States? Not that he was much of a socialist, but you take the point. Also this afternoon, Donald Trump has set Saturday at noon for a deadline for all remaining Israeli hostages to be released by Hamas, warning all hell is going to break out. What are the implications of that? And MPs opposing the assisted dying bill say its safeguards are being weakened under proposed changes which would remove the need for a High Court judge to approve every case. There's lots to say about that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. John says, there was once a man called Sir Keir who believes in a system of two-tier. He lied through his backside to gain a bit of a landslide and went to Durham for a beer. Keir's going to stop the boats to gain more votes, but he has no idea. You see, I did tidy it a little bit on the way, John, just to let it kind of rhythmically go. I like it. Thank you. I think we need more poetry on this programme. In fact, we need a poetry corner, really. We could maybe get Pam Ayres or, some classic British poet to come in on a daily basis to read out your poems. Who would you like to read your haiku would be the question. This one in from Kevin. Good afternoon. Look at the video they put out. Really, do you think that we're all stupid to believe that video? You saw one man go on a plane, the rest was security, and I bet that one man was given $3,000 to go. And the other funny thing is, when the Tories tried to send a plane with a rapist or a killer on it, Labour's human rights solicitors were all over it, saying it was illegal then. But it's OK now. It's a joke. Is it the 1st of April, says Calvin in Macclesfield. It's a very good point. They wanted the videos. That was the game changer on this. They wanted the videos, wanted to be seen. Look at us getting all tough on the migrants, was their kind of line on this. Let's speak with Oscar Reddrop, former special advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister. Oscar, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you doing?
Good. Nice to have you with us again. I'm sure last time you were on, we spoke about this, the meetings that come up over things like migration. Have the Labour Party stolen a march on this one over the Tories?
Not quite. I mean, it's interesting. I think a couple of mistakes have been made here. So, first of all, they briefed this ahead of time. They told us all that these videos were coming down the track. And then the element of authenticity and, surprise to a degree is lost. They're kind of, showing how proud they are that they're producing these videos, which looks, you're revealing too many of the cogs there. It feels disingenuous to the public from the bat. Again, when you peel behind the curtain a little bit, these flights these are not new. These have always existed. And then you look again, this is very low hanging fruit. A lot of these people have decided to leave voluntarily. And, bigger picture, zoom out a little bit more, it just unfortunately doesn't touch the sides. I mean, I think the Reform Party have come out pretty aggressively on it today. It was only a week or so ago, and again, Farage referenced this today. There's around, 600,000 unaccounted for, illegal immigrants in London alone. And so the numbers that we're seeing on these planes, like I said, it just doesn't touch the sides. The one thing I would say, in fairness, and, during my time at Number 10, it was something that we didn't, I think, always achieve, which was thinking about showing, not just telling. So I have respect in many ways for what the Labour government are trying to do here. They're trying to show their proactivity. But if anything, and this is slightly counterintuitive, because the numbers behind the videos that they're putting out don't add up for people, and people aren't stupid, it may even push them away. It may push them away to, reform, for example, where they go, why don't I just vote for the real thing?
Well, yes, I think that's precisely the problem, almost the open goal that they have set on this one, because in order to be consistently authentic, they'd have to be releasing this kind of video and these sort of numbers on almost a monthly basis. I very much doubt they're about to do that. I do wonder, Oscar, whether was it just a headache for governments and the Home Office? Whenever I've interviewed, and I think if you interviewed most of the Home Secretaries for the last God knows how many years, they all have a good intention to want to do this. It's like knife crime. I'm going to solve knife crime. I remember Jack Straw years ago. I have no doubt that Mr. Straw and, Blunkett was a bit of a tough old stick over there in the Home Office. All of these characters, left or right, were of course they want to solve it, but they don't. And it's always been my guess that with immigration, it's like, do you know what, let's just leave that one alone and it'll rumble on, and the worst that could happen is that people like us will do debates on it on the radio and television. But other than that, most people won't notice. We'll just get on with our lives. Is that how it was?
I think there's an element of truth to that. I think, and it's always, whenever, elections come around and when you're in the present moment, sometimes it's hard to see things clearly. But I do think things are different now. Yeah. I do think the general public feels so let down on this issue and have done for so long, and actually they won't stand for that. And I think the Labour Party are aware of that. The government are aware that come the next election, if they haven't delivered on this, it is problem. It's a huge problem for them. Yeah. But a reason why these things often don't come off, when you try something quite bold, brash, kind of out the box like Rwanda, lawyers get involved, planes are halted, they can't take off the ground. So I have sympathy to an extent, because this is such a difficult issue. But honestly, if you are a leader of a political party in this country, let alone Prime Minister, and you think this is an issue that people will just forget about and not care about and not hold you to account on, you are so mistaken. Because, and I'm not even going to attach my personal views on immigration into this, but just looking dispassionately, it's not just. It is an issue that actually kind of filters through into every aspect of life. And, for so long, and, to be truly introspective about it, there are a lot of government advisors and MPs and cabinet ministers, et cetera, who don't actually have to live in the communities that are so under strain due to illegal immigration, for instance. And so maybe they turn a blind eye to it, but that's just not going to hold come the next election. It just isn't. It would be interesting to see what if a Reform UK government was to be formed in 2029. Day one, what would that look like? Will we have coaches and coaches of officers and security going to all of those hotels where there's tens of thousands of young men who've been placed in holiday inns and travel lodges, etc.? Would they all be taken somewhere? My guess on this is that it's probably, it's probably harder than you think it is. That's the only slack I would really afford to any government. You can't. Where are you going to take those people? Where's the plane going to go? Where's it going to land? Even Trump, when he wanted to take a couple of plane loads of people to Colombia, had to threaten them with tariffs in order to get the planes to land. So it's anything but. Once people are here, getting people removed is anything but easy. Absolutely, and it'll be really interesting to see, because when we talk about reform, and this is probably their number one issue that they will use come the election, this will be their kind of cornerstone of why people should reject the establishment and drift over to reform. And it is going to be interesting to see the meat on the bones for their plans on immigration, because they're going to have to really think. It can't just be headline chasey, and it can't just be, you know, as Farage has done today, kind of, you know, really criticising these videos and the numbers and how they don't really touch the sides. All very true, but they are going to need to really flesh out the detail.
Yeah.
And that's a very different challenge. And not just flesh out the detail, but if they really want to get into power, I mean, and not just be a protest party, they're going to have to provide detail on how they will solve the, you know, as we've been discussing, the decade-long issue of immigration with something that is actually enforceable, and that the media, that voters, that the Tories, that the Labour government will look to pick apart. And under those floodlights, it's going to be really interesting to see how reforms stand up to that.
Yeah, spot on. Let's move to this story. Keir Starmer is to visit Donald Trump by the end of February, possibly as soon as next week. They're going to set their powwow in the Oval Office as soon as Mr. Trump has a slot in his schedule. I'm sure the presidential schedule is quite a busy one. Because it's like, I mean, you've worked in Number 10, you know what it's like to work up close with a Prime Minister. I mean, you can have a diary that is just full of these kind of 10-minute moments, right? You know, you've got to meet a load of school kids who are coming for a visit. Then you've got to meet at some charities. You've got to give a minor speech. It might just be 40 seconds in one of the Downing Street rooms. And you do that, and then you go off for something else, and you've got a phone call with the President of France. I mean, that really is the reality of leadership, right?
It really is, and every corridor that is walked down, everything is planned to, in almost 5-minute intervals. Boris was someone who slightly harder to keep him structured to those 5-minute segments and intervals than I think maybe other leaders, but that was kind of part of the fun. That was part of the joy. But on this Trump visit, I mean, this is not like any other visit. This is not just slam it in the diary, let's do a 20-minute briefing beforehand and hope for the best. This is critical, and it's coming at a critical and crucial time. Tariffs, trade wars, the Mandelson appointment as ambassador has not got off to the best of starts, and just they are not natural bedfellows, Starmer and Donald Trump. Again, trying to be as objective as possible. Whatever you think of the styles of each politician, they are in completely different directions. So it sits so awkwardly, when you see Starmer almost courting Trump. And I think and again, people listening to this and watching this may think, can I have some detail, please, Oscar? But, from a media perspective, which is kind of my speciality, it's going to be fascinating to watch the body language when they finally meet. Because, I mean, for me, there's absolutely no contest there. And Trump, I think, after all the poor language and actually just kind of quite naked insults that the Labour Party have thrown across at Trump over the years, I think he's a clever guy, Trump, and he's going to kind of physically dominate Starmer, and that's something I think Starmer will be aware of. He won't want to respond to that weekly either. But on the substantive stuff, honestly, this is huge. This is a really, really big visit. I have a weird feeling, and this is not based on much, I have a weird feeling that there will be, this might not happen. I think there might be some delay. I think there might be a spanner in the works.
That's going to be interesting. And we've already got tariffs on us, of course, haven't we? Because every country's got tariffs on steel and aluminium now. That was announced in the last sort of 72 hours. So I don't know how much we import or export, rather, to the United States. It may be a small amount. We still sort of have a steel exporting component to our economy. The Canadians are the big area, of course, that export that to the States. But has Starmer got to come back with a trade deal? I know that doesn't happen in these kind of meetings, but has it got to be something? If it does happen, aside from your potential theory that it might not, but if it does, has he got to return with something other than, didn't we get on rather well?
That's quite a good impression. Ironically, in many ways, I think whatever and again, ahead of time, there will be agendas and there'll be briefing into the media. There'll be expectation management, probably from either side, although I'm sure Trump doesn't care quite as much. But in this country, we'll see the government kind of briefing expectations ahead of time. But ironically, when you think about the history of, Brexit, et cetera, and Starmer, and I think Starmer will want to come back with a set of agreements, or at least if they're just penciled in, or ambitions, even if it's on quite vague terms, that allow us to be in a better position with the US than other EU nations. And would that be possible without something like Brexit? Probably not.
No, indeed. And Trump won't hold back, of course. You can see him sitting there in the Oval Office saying, what you need to learn, Keir, is you need to learn how to lead, man. You can almost hear him saying something as brutal as that, and Keir sort of going, oh, you are a wag, or something of that nature. We'll watch with interest. Final one here, Oscar. Labour MP Kim Ledbetter, of course, who's led up the whole assisted dying law, proposing to remove the requirement for a High Court judge's approval for assisted deaths. This is going to do nothing, of course, for those that oppose all of this. I mean, the thinking behind this, as I understand it, is that the judiciary, the legal system, we haven't got that many judges to spare. So now the proposal is a 3-member panel, including a social worker and a psychiatrist, would approve assisted deaths. But it does certainly feed into those already sceptical will feel even more sceptical now.
Yeah, so I say this as someone who is still, despite all the parliamentary debates that we had over the last months or so, is still kind of undecided and on the fence about it, which I think speaks to how just difficult an issue that is. However, probably nudging over to being in favour of the bill. However, I think removing this safeguard when you were so front foot and provided so many assurances that this would not happen at this early stage, I think quite rightly a lot of people are absolutely fuming about. And in terms of the process, if you think about such a crucial bill, it's hard to even you have to really take a step back. Such an important, emotive bill for a change like this, I think will really, really, really damage confidence. And actually, and I don't like this phrase a lot, but trust. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think the campaign on the other side of this will have kind of word into action now and into gear, because it's to be fair, it's quite simply not what was promised. And a lot of MPs who were very unsure, who did drift over into being in favour of this bill, partly did it because of these safeguards.
Sure. Spot on. Listen, Oscar, we stopped there for time. Great to have you on again. Oscar Redrup, former special advisor to Boris Johnson when Mr. Johnson was Prime Minister. Thank you to him. Pick the bones out of that, if you will. In particular, the assisted dying bill, whether that does that weaken any support you might have had for it, knowing that the High Court judge element will be, or the proposal is that it will be removed. I appreciate that was tricky for the judiciary to say, you've got to supply a judge every time a case like this comes up. We haven't got that many judges. We couldn't do it. It's not pragmatic. But does that in many ways reduce or dilute, in some cases obliterate the last bit that you did have faith in on this story? Whatever way you swing on that one, 0344 499 1000. Labour's surprise solution to immigration. Have they gone and done it? Well, we know the answer secretly. Will they continue to do what they've done in the last week or so? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
My producer Christian asked me this morning, do you think there's somebody actually deliberately trying to screw up Keir Starmer's prime ministership by just giving him really, really bad advice? Like, let's not bother checking the background of this woman, Ashley Dalton. Let's just appoint her as a health minister to replace the health minister that wants to kill off pensioners and is anti-Semitic and racist. And let's replace him with this woman who's previously said you can identify as a llama and, of course, you can have a penis even if you're a woman.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Interesting one from Jace in Dudley, who makes a really good point. It's something that did come up earlier. Amazing how there were no lefty lawyers doing anything now that Labour are in charge. When the Tories were in charge, you couldn't stop lawyers shouting, "It's illegal!" Come on, Ian. You know Labour aren't the answer to anything. Well, no, of course we know that. But they are purporting to be tough on this. They made the glossy... It was the Trump-like videos that... I think is the funniest part of the whole thing. Look at us getting... They've done nothing about channel migration. Not only have they done nothing about it, they've said nothing about it. That, I think, is the greatest crime. They talk about smashing the gangs, which is just a massive red herring in the bigger picture. Smashing the gangs is sort of a given. Yeah, if you can find some, you know, what the people traffickers... It's organised crime, right? I mean, it's Northern European, huge industry. Who knows who's behind it? Lots of different components and elements, I would imagine. Let's go to David in West Sussex. David, hi.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just on the immigration policy. I'm married an Australian. We've been together 15 years and been listening more recently, and you know, continually hearing that citizenship is being thrown out to illegal immigrants left, right, and centre. And I thought it'd be interesting to sort of discuss with people, you know, legally the fees behind it and how long we've had to wait as a family. Yeah. You know, we've got 2 children, both born in the UK. I own a house, luckily. So you know, quite a privileged position, I guess. But yeah, I feel it's not spoken about enough about what, you know, families like myself actually have to go through, and hearing the fact that these other, you know, illegals are coming in.
You know, it's bizarre because every now and again we do take a call like yours, David, and somebody says, you won't believe what we had to do to, you know, you're talking about professional people from similar countries, Western, you know, countries. So in that respect, there's a certain, you know, relevance to that. And yet, you know, there's costs, there's waivers and visas and fees and all sorts going on, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's costing around £15,000 all in, and the overall waiting period is actually over 5 years. So, in that period of time, you've got to bear in mind that my wife has no access to benefits, cannot join my mortgage, cannot get a credit card. She's basically you're penned in.
So she's a mother. You've got 2 kids. Yeah. You live in a house that's privately owned. Has your name on it at the moment. You'd be happy to kind of, you know, put that in to hers as well, but that's not allowed. Nope. So despite that, she has no official status as yet.
No, other than it's basically a bridging visa what she's on. And to sort of, you know, to add fuel to the fire, she's also got to pay an NHS levy. You know, and you know, we've recently. Well, previously, I should say, lived in Australia, which is a very different setup. You know, I was able to use their care system free of charge. Yep. You know, the process is lengthy for me to get my visa, etc., over there. But they're very good at deterring people which shouldn't be there. And yeah, it was a massive shock when we actually had to jump through the hoops.
Yeah, and I always hear it from countries where there really is no reason for there to be any kind of massive controversy. You know, you're not coming from, you know, some dictatorship or some weird backwater place where they exist as if it's 1586 and, you know, your partner might well be, you know, an operative of the government or something like that. You know, you don't, there's an obvious correlation between certain countries, you know, those countries that are part of, if you like, the Western alliance. It would have been, I'm sure you've made the point yourselves at home, David, it would have been easier
Absolutely.
for her to go to Calais and jump on a boat and come.
Well, that's it, and that's the in-family joke at the moment amongst me and my siblings and the rest of the family.
Yeah, yeah.
If we did it illegally, she'd be here throwing a citizenship and she could get on with it. But, you know, the other fact as well, she's on maternity leave at the moment, but previously to that, you know, she was paying taxes, she was, you know, trying to be as involved in the country as possible and do everything by the book. And the more you listen to the news and the more these stories you hear about people suing the government and blah, 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 it just does become, you get to a point where you think, well, what on earth are we paying this for? Why do we have to? And B, it is a bit sickening, to be honest. And, you know, local MP doesn't want to know about it. So, you know...
why does the local MP not want to know about it? I mean,
well, that's it.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I used to produce a few years ago. She was from New Zealand, so it was exactly the same problem. And in fact, she was single, but she didn't reach the earning criteria to be able to stay. It couldn't be argued that she had a job that nobody else could. All those questions you go through. But she was really good at the job, and she knew the job, and she knew it well, and there was literally no reason why she shouldn't be doing it, apart from a bit of paperwork that said, no, you can't do that. So she became, she had to go back because she would have become an illegal immigrant. I mean, it's preposterous. It is absolutely preposterous. Listen, so it happens with Kiwis as well, where Australians will be pleased to know. David, thank you. I hear it and I feel it and I understand it. It's just a bit bonkers, isn't it? I know you've got to have a set of rules. I think Theresa May was responsible, actually, for lowering the bar. And yeah, there is something about, it shouldn't just apply to any, you know, it should apply to lots of different jobs where you would say, so the argument was with my former producer is, well, why does, you know, that's a job a British person could have, not one that you just fly across the world and take. Well, I mean, you could argue, if you really argued that about everything, I think it'd be amazing how many people you'd have to fire in all sorts of heady positions of power. So you could sort of argue that, maybe. But I think you could also say, well, you know, what about people whose skill set is proven? What happens to the visa that you've worked on? So you get a visa for X amount of time, and in that visa, in the duration of that visa, the time you're here, you've proven to be, you know, a part of the system. You've chosen and developed yourself to be a crucial part of that job that you're doing. Does that not count for anything? Against this backdrop of tens of thousands of people who are coming over with literally nothing at all, no qualification or desire to do any of those kind of jobs or ability to do any of those kind of jobs. We'll have more on that from you, 0344 499 1000. Let's give you a chance to win some money here, OK? This is an absolute beauty. I mean, this is an absolute stunner. Imagine this falling into your pocket. Time to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning £25,000.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Indeed. Jules says, for balance, can you invite some older former special advisors onto your show in the future. It seems we only have young, perhaps less experienced ones voicing opinions. I'm sure there must be some older former special advisors who've been through a couple of decades of government's life and business insight. One of the problems in the last 10 years is we've had so many governments. It's produced so many special advisors. So there is this almost a big pool of special. Our own Peter Cardwell was part of that. Friends of mine that were part of that, that worked in some of those administrations in Downing Street. So in that time, when we had David Cameron, and then we had Theresa May, and we had Boris Johnson, and we had Liz Truss, and we had Rishi Sunak, and I'm sure I've missed somebody out. There's one missing, isn't there? I'm sure there's one missing. You take the point. Usually what tends to happen, I think, in so if you were looking at special advisors from the Cameron government, or you'd have to go back to the Blair or Brown government before that. Some of those people do speak with us now, by the way, quite a lot of them, actually, that we have on. But many would have, by that stage, moved into maybe different worlds. I'm just thinking aloud. Fox's fan says, Ian, get it right. There's no organised crime with regards to the illegal boats coming. Well, I defer to your knowledge on that one, Fox's fan. Maybe there isn't. Certainly, I think the system that is operating in Northern Europe is a very organised cartel of people who are putting something together. And the smart money says, when you look at the amount of money that's being spent on this and the amount of money you have to pay to make a crossing, someone is pocketing, you know, a lot of cash. A lot of cash happening on the southern part of Europe as well. Boats coming over from Africa to the Mediterranean, Spain, Italy, those kind of countries. Whether you call it crime or organised crime, either way, it's a flipping crime scene, right? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000 2523. Dave in Reading, the irony of this immigration mess is that it was Blair and the Labour Party that are guilty for the mess we're in. P.S. Again, where's all the lefty lawyers gone? It's a very good point. Stuart says the claim of migrant remover is false. Where are the crowds of Labour activists blocking the hotels or coaches or lying in the road? They stopped the Tories from doing it, and now they're doing it. No one is stopping them. It's easy without pushback. I mean, it is fascinating. There was an absolute classic one, wasn't there? Somebody who was... I can't remember what the full story was, but I know that there was a girl on a plane and she stood on the plane and she was crying after the flight was... It wasn't a deportation flight. I think it was a conventional flight that happened to have this guy on it. And, you know, she was crying at her amazing humour. She'd say, this poor soul that she thought was going to be sent back. It was an injustice, and the tears were falling down her cheeks as the police removed this poor man from the aeroplane. Turned out to be a prolific rapist, as it turned out. But don't let that little inconvenient fact stand in the way of things. Donald Trump has set Saturday as a deadline, Saturday noon, for all remaining Israeli hostages to be released by Hamas. The US president says the Gaza ceasefire should be cancelled if they're not returned, warning all hell is going to break loose. Hamas officials have hit back at Trump, saying that his threatening language only complicates matter. Let's speak with Hannah Weisfeld, who's the executive director and founder of Yachad, the British Jewish organisation. Hannah, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Your reaction, firstly, to Donald Trump's words, because they were very firm words.
Well, I mean, it's really unclear what his threat is. Nobody can tell me what all hell will break loose means. And I think that given that the ceasefire is hanging in the balance and people are literally begging for the lives of their loved ones to be saved, for the hostages to come home, for Palestinians to be safe in Gaza, very extreme threats when what we really need is careful diplomacy can only be unhelpful.
I thought it's interesting. When I heard him say that, first of all, I thought, oh, yikes, I'm not sure that's necessarily the right language. And then exactly as you just said, I thought sort of overanalyzed it a bit. Thought, well, maybe, all hell could break loose. That could mean politically. It could mean, I don't know, something about sanctions in the... Who knows? It doesn't have to mean war, but that's certainly your go-to thought when a president makes that comment, particularly over this particular dispute.
Yeah, and I mean, there's very few options available, right? So you can go back to war. The Palestinian civilians of Gaza have returned all over the Gaza Strip. There is almost nothing left to bomb. And so going back to war would mean mass civilian casualty on an even greater scale than what we've already seen. There is not public support for that in Israel at all, far from it, in fact. You can block humanitarian aid into Gaza, which will mean starving millions of people. So at the moment, it seems to be that he's making a lot of threats that don't have very clear consequences. I think what's really important is that you take that threat alongside his new grand plan for Gaza, which is to transfer 2.5 million civilians out permanently, so the US can take over the Gaza Strip. He seems to be painting a very unsavory future for the Palestinian people, and one which they're never going to be prepared to accept. And when the ceasefire is on the brink of collapse, it seems deeply irresponsible to threaten something beyond the ceasefire, which nobody will ever accept. Because on what basis would you then continue the ceasefire?
And also, I mean, it's a reasonable question. So what is Trump's authority on this anyway? I mean, I appreciate that America are huge players on the global stage, and the American-Israeli alliance is about as connected, particularly now, as you can get. But ultimately, this isn't his battle.
It's certainly not his land. And when you hear him talk about this great piece of real estate, maybe he wants to go and build himself a golf course, on top of bombed out homes in Gaza. But Donald Trump in the United States has no legal right to occupy the territory of the Gaza Strip. And so if that is what he intends to do, and in order to do so, he needs to bend the arms of surrounding Arab countries to, against their will, take 2.5 million Palestinians who will refuse to leave their homes because they know that there is no chance that they're coming back. So then it will have to be violently removed. What kind of future is that? And what's the point of ending the war if that is what's going to happen at the end of it?
It's interesting. Sorry, do continue.
No, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, on that point of people leaving their homes and this idea that Jordan and others should be taking people in, as it were, the sort of tacit caveat to that is that, don't worry, people will go back to their homes. Now, I know there's some suspicion on that, but is there any reason why that couldn't happen? I think there's even something in the United Nations Big Book of Rules that says that could be something you could do.
There's plenty of things in the United Nations Big Book of Rules.
True.
The rules don't get followed, and so, if you think about the makeup of the people that have the power, first of all, Donald Trump doubled down yesterday on his position about the fact that it would be a permanent removal, and he said no, they won't be coming back. So he has not rolled back. They rolled back briefly, the White House spokespeople, on this idea that it was permanent. But you have in power in Israel today extremist ministers who, from the outset of the war, have made it clear that actually they would like the people of Gaza to leave, and they would like to resettle the Gaza Strip. These are not people that have the interests of either Israeli or civilian Palestinians. They are hell-bent on a messianic idea that they can repopulate the greater land of historical Israel. And in order to do that, you need to resettle the Gaza Strip. And so no Palestinian is going to look at that government inside Israel today and say, well, they control the borders of Gaza. I've got the confidence that if I temporarily remove myself for 15 years to Jordan or Egypt or wherever, I will be allowed back in. The 2.5 million Palestinians that live in Gaza are refugees from previous wars in 1948 and 1967 who never returned to their homes. They are not going to leave again. And so what options are on the table other than forcibly removing them?
Do you sense, what is your gut on this then, Hannah, in terms of what Donald Trump probably meant by this? I mean, he is a man that shoots off the cuff and says some wild stuff, and like him or hate him, that is his style. It could just be I really don't mean any pun in this, a metaphoric rocket that he's firing into the debate. Could it be just that he's giving a warning shot saying, sort this out?
I think it's probably a mixture of all of those things. It's very hard to tell to what extent he takes his own ideas seriously. So does Donald Trump really believe that Jordan and Egypt are going to agree to take 2.5 million Palestinian refugees and that they will willingly leave their homes? I'm not sure. I don't know how much Donald Trump knows about the people of Gaza and the politics and the history. My suspicion is he feels that if he kind of comes in with a very big grandiose statement, it will force Saudi and other Arab countries to step up and take some kind of lead. But what everybody actually knows is what Trump really wants is a deal with Saudi Arabia. He wants a normalization deal with Saudi Arabia and Israel for the benefit of America, and the Saudis want that too. Now, my personal view is that you cannot square a circle in which you say, we're going to have this normalization deal and there will be no future for the state of Palestine. Because you have to remember that not only is he threatening that the US will take over the Gaza Strip, he said in his press conference the other day with Netanyahu that we're going to make a decision soon, not that America has the right to make this decision on whether we're going to allow Israel to annex the West Bank. Now, if Israel annexes the West Bank, the United States takes over the Gaza Strip, there is no land on which a future Palestinian state can be built because it's gone. It's gone to Israel and it's gone to America. You then have 7 million Palestinian people living between the river and the sea who have no future and have no prospects of equal political and civil rights, which is a tinderbox. Nobody is safe and secure in that reality. And so I don't think it is possible for Trump to get what he wants by just shouting, shouting from the rooftops that he will do X, Y, and Z if he doesn't get his outcome, because I don't think his outcome is possible.
I tend to agree. I don't think his outcome, I mean, certainly this Riviera stuff with bowling alleys and big hotels, casinos and goodness knows why. I don't imagine that for 1 second. Maybe some of his critics have said, well, it's opened up a debate into areas perhaps that weren't being discussed before. Hannah, listen, we have to leave it there for time, but thank you for your assistance on that. Hannah Weisfeld, she is Executive Director and founder of Yachad, a British Jewish organisation. Thank you to her. Thoughts on that? You might want to respond from the other side of that. I think, it would be fair to say that Hannah sort of bats not really from a very pro-Netanyahu position. If your view is different, we'll take it. 0344 499 1000. More comments as well. Loads of messages to get through. Oh, by the way, we've got a brand new voice of doom. I don't know who this voice is either. So normally I'd be involved in selecting the voice, as I said the other day, through big meetings that we have in boardrooms with very important people. I don't know who this voice is, okay? So it's going to be as new to me as it is to you. We'll play you that voice. It's the mystery voice with the political angle bit. That's coming up in a couple of moments. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
When you look at the number of rapes that are being reported, it's hugely gone up. To make these points in the toxic environment we now live in, you've got to give people data. So they can't turn around and go, you're making this up because you hate brown people. You're making this up because you're a xenophobe. You're making this up because you're an Islamophobe. You need to actually say to people, here are the statistics. The Telegraph did a fantastic story where they had used prison population data from the year before. The only data available, women and girls are far less safe in Europe now as a direct consequence of mass immigration, and we have provided the evidence.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back to the phones in just a second. So the voice of doom, it's the mystery voice with a political vibe. It's that bit. Let's have a listen to the brand new voice.
I think it would be very difficult.
Who is that? You see, I genuinely do not know who that is. Another listen?
I think it would be very difficult.
Now, don't call in, because there is no prize. I'm just pondering, I'm digesting it here. You can message in if you want to have a crack at it that way. 87222. Here's the voice again.
I think it would be very difficult.
If you think you know who that is, 87222, and if we get a right answer, we'll reveal all on the other side of the news at 3 o'clock. If we don't, it rolls over. I have to say, that was the third listen there that I've had. I haven't got a clue. Can we hear it again?
I think it would be very difficult.
Gosh, no. I think that is very difficult, frankly. If you think you know, 87222, hopefully an answer coming after 3. Carl is in Surrey. What do you got for us, Carl? Afternoon.
Ian, greetings. I almost had it on the tip of my tongue, but I won't say it now.
OK, all right, just in case. You might be disqualified, then I'll have to report you to Ofcom for malfeasance on live radio.
Yeah, we don't want that, do we?
No, terrible.
Ian, I've just been giggling at myself for several days talking about this Trump thing and the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and all the other things. And I think his advisors are bright enough to know the historical precedent for all of this in that region. And it was the end of the Ottoman Empire in about 1922-23, something like that, when over 1 million Muslims and Christians were exchanged between the Macedonian Greeks and the Turks to form Turkey.
Yeah.
And if they could do it then, with the will that existed back in there in Eastern Europe then, why can't we do a similar thing now and make Israel purely Israel, the way England is purely England-ish and Wales is purely Wales-ish, so that the reason for fighting has a boundary to it that Israel can defend? And that's my question.
What is, like all of these things, you look at it and you think, I could solve this. I really could solve this. But clearly, lots of really important people, Carl. I'm not saying me and you aren't important people, but lots of big brains around the world have given it a go and no one's been able to do it.
No, I think the political will is soft at the moment. At the end of the First World War, it was such a horrific thing that the world had been through that the political will existed to put the Macedonian Muslims back into Turkey and to have the Christians back into Greece. And so they did this massive people exchange, and then building went on thereafter, and it's been going on thereafter ever since. And, you know, if we don't find ways of having a breakthrough, no breakthrough will be had.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's the more, I was about to say unconventional. I think what you've just said isn't that unconventional. It could be worked out. Maybe the answer's staring them in the face.
It could be, and you know, I don't have a big enough brain to work it out. But I'm just saying there is a historical precedent. It happened in Europe, and when the Muslim enclave got too close to Western Europe, that was the result.
Yeah, there it is. Great call, Carl. Thank you very much indeed. No messing around there. Terry says, I was listening to Julia earlier, and she was talking about Gen Z not wanting to fight for this country. We did talk, oddly, to the same guest, Connor, yesterday on the programme on this very point. But Terry says, to be honest, why would my son want to fight and possibly give his life for this country when he can see all the young men coming across the boat, staying in hotels, given just about everything? Would Starmer say, sorry, these poor immigrants can't fight. They've come from a war-torn country. They have PTSD and all other excuses they come out with. This is what patriotism is being... This is why patriotism is being lost in this country. I certainly wouldn't let him go to war on that basis. We've lost a sense of cohesion. And do you know what? I'm going to say it for the 10 millionth time. Doesn't come up enough. I don't know whether it doesn't come up because it sounds... does it sound... No, it can't sound extreme to say you think social cohesion is a really important thing. I would say it's as important as your economic status or your qualified contribution to a country. When you go to a country as an immigrant, your ability to assimilate, and assimilation can take many forms, I get that, but your ability to be part of the gang is absolutely up there. And because we've lost that, we've really lost that, it's never been a factor. Even when I hear, I mean, Nigel Farage will talk about that, but I don't think it gets the assimilation bit, the social cohesion bit, doesn't get the headlines it should do, and I think it is number one on the list of issues around who you allow to settle in your country and what the criteria or the rule book says. Now, it's hard to force it on somebody. You can't tell someone, you've got to start eating fish and chips and drinking tea at 3 o'clock in the afternoon while playing tennis at the weekend, and then go to the seaside and buy some rock. You can't make it happen. Cultural assimilation does work on many levels, but you kind of know it when you see it. We've lost a kind of rudder in many ways, and I think when I hear a comment like that about fighting for your country, I get it. Because many people go, what am I fighting for? What is my country? Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I think the thing that was most interesting is there's a lot of people who might decide not to fight for them, and then they're really snookered, aren't they?
Yes, that's very true.
You know, it works both ways. In relation to the immigration stuff and Farage, you know, more and more the Labour Party's just writing his manifesto for him. You can see that they have no idea what to do, so they're aping what Trump did. But Trump was very strong message.
Yeah.
The people were in chains, in shackles, getting on planes. We can't do that. The minute we put someone near chains to put them on a plane, can you imagine? The Guardian would actually just see
True,
they'd all just die.
although that is a method of arrest in the States, right? You know, you see people going into court, they've always got their legs chained up. I've always thought it was a bit over the top in most cases, but I guess there's that. On that point, though, Andrew, see, Trump's got a problem as well, hasn't he? Because he's got to keep this up.
Yeah, remember, he's got a lot more than we have. He's got the whole of the civil service are now committed to him, just like you were talking about.
Yeah.
They're committed to the country. And the Labour Party, remember, the unions were the first people to go to the courts and get not get the ability to turn votes back.
Yeah.
Now they're working with Starmer, but the best they can do is old people who were in the system being pushed out. There's not a single boat person on there. And it's very interesting when you look at it in the round. Starmer is getting weaker and weaker.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Listen, Andrew, I've got to fly because we're about to hit the clock. Thank you for that. I don't think this is going to scupper reform. We asked the question earlier, will Labour be the surprise solution to immigration? Clearly with tongue-in-cheek. Bearing, if you listen to this show on a regular basis, it couldn't be anything else. But it did, for some reason, a lot of people thought we were serious about it. You know, that we genuinely thought that Labour would have to do what we've seen in these videos on a daily basis to begin to even start to make a difference. We've got some great messages on the way in a couple of moments. Also this from Ben, who says, same boat as your caller David with the Australian wife. My wife's Canadian and 3 years in, it's so annoying hearing the daily stories given the hoops you have to jump through. And as he said, the kicker is paying around about 1,500 quid, is that? 15,000 national insurance before you even start. Then she pays national insurance on her earnings like everyone else, and you don't get it back. It's part of the cost of coming here legally. Wow. We've got the will we get a voice of doom correct answer. Here's the voice.
I think it would be very difficult.
Who is that? Don't call, ain't no prize. But you can message 87222. We'll tell you if we get an answer after the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome back to the home of common sense. As we've been discussing, the Home Office have released Trump-style raid videos as it boasts 19,000 migrants have been removed since Labour came to power. But opposition MPs argue it's still not enough. And you have to look at who those 19,000 were as well. Many already pending from the last government. Some were paid to leave. Others just said, yeah, all right, my time's up. I've got no chance of getting a visa. I'm off. Will that continue? That's the only hope Labour have if they want to win this particular battle. Also this afternoon, a transgender NHS doctor who got changed in front of women colleagues has claimed to be a biological female, arguing sex has no defined or agreed meaning in science. What's the deal there? And meat appears to be back on the menu, with veganism in decline as health-conscious Gen Zers shift their eating habits due to the cost of living and changing perceptions of what is a healthy diet. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Lots to get through here. Steve says, what would happen if an Australian came over the channel in a dinghy and claimed asylum? Would citizenship come easier that way? I think Adam, our producer, has probably had that very conversation in his own head as well, as did our previous caller. Why wouldn't you? Brad says, the thing with reform is that even before I see their detailed policies, I completely believe their intention and integrity. That is lacking in the other parties. It's a great point. It's whether you really believe it, isn't it? Like, you don't feel, you know someone's heart isn't really in it, and you pick that up, you sniff it immediately. Some people are good at faking their heart being in stuff. I know politicians have done that all over the place. Broadcasters have a PhD in it, for God's sake. But I do think, genuinely, reform can claim authenticity on that one. I'm not sure the other parties can. Right, let's see. Should we do the voice of doom? Have we got a correct answer on the voice of doom? This is the voice we played you.
I think it would be very difficult.
Who is that? Is it Bob Seeley, the former MP? No. Jeremy Corbyn? No. It's a little bit Corbyn-like. No. A lot of people said Ian Duncan Smith. I'm told that is a no. Rory Stewart? No. It's not David Davis. John McDonnell? Jacob Rees-Mogg? Craig McKinley? No. Angela Rayner? Yeah. No. No. In fact, we haven't got a right answer. Can we hear it again, Amy?
I think it would be very difficult.
Who is that? I mean, we say it's a political... I mean, that doesn't mean it's an MP. It could be someone from the House of Lords. Somebody connected to politics in some sort of way. I don't know who that is, by the way. I genuinely do not know. Now, an NHS doctor who identifies as a woman says trans women should be allowed to change in front of female colleagues. This is Dr. Beth Upton, born male, told an employment tribunal that sex has no clear definition in science. That's going to come as a shock to a lot of people. The case follows allegations by nurse Sandy Peggy, who claims she faced harassment sharing female changing rooms with Dr. Upton. This happened in Fife in Scotland. Let's speak with Stephanie Davis-Array, Director of Transgender Trend and Advisor at GenSpect. Let's start with this then, Stephanie. Very straightforward question. Sex has no clear definition in science. Did you know that?
No. Well, clearly it does have a very objective definition based on biology, based on being male or female. We all know that. And a doctor should surely know it. A doctor who's employed by the NHS should have a basic understanding of the male and female sexes. There are only two, and it takes a male and a female to make a baby. And this doctor seems to be confused about all those issues.
I mean, this is a doctor, which makes it perhaps more either disturbing or fascinating. I'm not sure which. But for a doctor to say, you know, there's really nothing to see here, and I am a biological female, when quite clearly, evidently, demonstrably, this person is, and I say this respectfully, is not a biological female, right?
Well, no, this person is born male and so is therefore going to be male for the rest of his life. You can't change your sex. If he was biologically female, he would be in his own terms, a cis woman. You know, there's no reason to transition. So clearly he does know that he's biologically male. He may maintain a strong belief that he isn't, but he clearly does know. And the issue here is, are women entitled to say that they know as well? So particularly, you know, in the workplace, does a woman have the right to notice that he's actually male? And does she have the right to feel uncomfortable and to complain if he is in a situation like a changing room where she is getting changed and has to get changed in front of him? Because the only reason that Dr. Upton seems to think could be possible for pointing out that he is a man is transphobia, bigotry, or misunderstanding of trans people. But clearly our brains are wired to instantly, it's really real primitive brain stuff, this, instantly recognize whether somebody is male or female. It's one of the most significant factors of characteristics about somebody we need to notice, and particularly women do, for reasons of safety.
And in a case like this, and I'm kind of, you know, obviously I don't have the same skin in the game as a bloke, but I do defend women's rights, women's spaces, women's entitlement to privacy and safety. And all of that, it's a given. I also don't think, and I'm sure you'd probably back me up on this, Stephanie, I don't think it's up to women to come up with a solution to this. I mean, it might be, you know, great if we had one, but I don't think it's the role of a woman to find whatever arrangement it should be for men who are identifying as women. But I simultaneously, the question that always comes up that I can never quite answer is there a difference between, you know, a bloke with a beard and a penis that walks into a female swimming changing room and gets changed, pants off and all the rest of it? Clearly it's a bloke saying, you know, I'm a woman. And somebody who might have had surgical procedures, they might have had top surgery so that they have breasts, they're standing there in a pair of knickers and a bra, they look like a woman, their hair is like a woman, they sound like a woman. Is there a distinction between those two examples?
I don't think so, no. I mean, if a man gets implants and has his penis cut off, that doesn't make him a woman. We have to.
Does it change the threat, though, if that is the right way to look at it?
I don't think it does, because there are many signifiers that somebody is male. In behaviour, in the way that you walk, things like Adam's apple, bone structure. There are all, you know, usually height. There are all sorts of signifiers that somebody is male, and therefore a woman will feel threatened and feel intimidated and feel uncomfortable if she perceives that this person is male. We don't have to look at somebody's genitals to know that.
So you'd feel equally as uncomfortable with a man with a beard and a penis, and as you would with somebody with, you know, to be typical about it, long blonde hair like this doctor, breasts, possibly even a vagina, or a surgically constructed vagina. The feeling would be the same.
The feeling for women would be it's a psychological safety and privacy in changing, and women generally, I think men are the same, but for women it's more important that we don't want to get changed in front of the opposite sex. For reasons of embarrassment, but also for reasons of safety. Crimes such as voyeurism and indecent exposure happen to women; they don't happen to men. I think most men understand that, and most men would feel uncomfortable getting changed in front of a woman. But actually, because he understands how uncomfortable that will make her feel, it's not such a big deal for men, but it certainly is for women. It's not an easy thing.
100%. What I mean, it's, again, I said at the beginning, it's not for you or anybody else to find the solution to this. It isn't, to put it quite bluntly, it's not your argument to have in that respect. You shouldn't have to defend why you want privacy and safety. That should be a given. But while we're talking about it, is there an answer to this? Because it comes up, I wouldn't say a lot, it just comes up from time to time, right?
I think there needs to be third spaces for anybody who's not comfortable in getting changed or using the toilet in front of the opposite sex. There need to be third spaces, and I think the trans community need to be campaigning for those third spaces so that everybody feels comfortable. It's not fair that one group gain rights at the expense of another group. And in this case, the other group is a very large group of 50% of the population are women. But yeah, in this case, it's up to the NHS to come up with solutions to this problem. Yeah. What they've done is left it and hoped that women wouldn't notice or would feel too afraid to speak up, too embarrassed to speak up. And if we're looking at the way that this nurse has been treated in this tribunal, you can understand why women are afraid to speak up. And also from what Dr. Upton has said, the only possible reason for speaking out is because you're a transphobic bigot. So you're going to be judged, and you're afraid of rocking the boat. And so women, typically will put up with it. And maybe they'll get changed in a toilet cubicle, or they'll wait until they're sure that their male colleague isn't in the changing room. But women should not have to do that in order to accommodate the feelings of a man.
I 100% agree with you, and I find it curious that we're even in this place, and you look at the fact that we're talking about a nurse in a tribunal, and it's got every kind of the hallmarks of every dystopian sort of horrible upside down world where, the new thinking, the way you've got to, think in a certain way, conclude, opine in a certain way, certain phrases and words are illegal, basic behaviour, instinctive or otherwise, has got to be eradicated. I mean, it's quite dark, isn't it, when you look at it?
Yes, and I think we need to say that Sandy Peggy is an incredibly brave woman for doing this. Look at the way she's been treated. Yeah. Look at the way that she's been judged and labelled, and how long this is taking. It's incredibly brave of any woman to speak out. She's a senior nurse with 30 years experience with the NHS. They've treated her appallingly, but she's had the guts to stand up and speak up, and she's not doing it just for herself. She's doing it for every other woman in employment who is having to put up with this. And so, she's quite a heroine for doing it, but you can see why women don't. Yeah,
I mean, if somebody had told her 30 years ago when she was a trainee nurse that the row she'd be having in 3 decades' time would be about sharing a changing room with a bloke, she'd have thought the world had gone mad, and mad it's gone.
She shouldn't have to be this brave.
Yeah.
It should be a work. The NHS have a choice here, as every employer does. You either base your rules on this nebulous concept of gender identity, or you base your rules on sex, which is clear, objective distinction between men and women.
100%.
If you base it on gender identity, well, whenever you use the word woman, nobody knows whether you mean woman or you mean man.
Yeah.
And that's just not tenable.
Listen, Stephanie, there might be a knight in shining armour to all of this story, and that is the new Health Minister, Ashley Dawson, who's just been appointed after the last fella got a little bit fruity on the WhatsApp groups. Ashley Dawson has got some interesting views on gender. I'm sure you're familiar with all of this. She'd previously argued against gendered toilets, suggested people with male anatomy could be women if they want to be. It's this bonkers stuff. And even said you can identify as a llama if you want to. She's now a government minister.
In health. So that's very worrying. And it's the same. It's exactly the same as what's happening in this tribunal. That is the belief. People are entitled to their beliefs, but it's not based on reality. Yeah. And rules and policies need to be based on reality, and particularly within the NHS. It's really public trust in the NHS. If you can't even define what male and female mean, it is plummeting.
We're in a worrying place. Stephanie, sadly we'll speak again, because these issues do come up from time to time. Stephanie Davis-Arai, Director of Transgender Trend, with us here on the programme. I think that would be rather sort of under... Yeah, the idea that a bloke goes in a women's changing room, that's just a no-no. Is there a difference as a woman, maybe you can answer this as a woman, if the person who was born a bloke looks like a girl now? Does that make a difference? I don't think it fundamentally does. I would say as well, blokes in changing rooms are... I go to the gym nearly on a daily basis. If I'm lazy, I just sit in the sauna or go for a swim or something. Blokes' etiquette in changing rooms is I'm not making light of serious stuff here, is pretty rubbish. And I don't know whether there is a portion of the male population that at some point in their life, maybe when they were little, maybe at some point during a procedure, they were injected with a very special gene. And that gene came with a very specific instruction that only manifests itself in changing rooms. And the instruction is, put your pants on last. What is that? Blokes walking around the place, get your pants on, man. What's wrong with you? And when I go to the gym in the daytime, there's a lot of retired blokes in there, not only pantless, mooching around, you know, I know what I'm going to do, says 20 stone Mick, who's 86. I'm going to bend over and dry my feet, while two bloody sandbags go sweeping across the floor as he's cleaning his toes. Put your pants on, man. What's wrong with you? There seems to be, I don't know what the resistance is. I'm seeing blokes who are getting ready to get changed for work. I've seen blokes put their shirt, tie and jacket on and still no flipping pants. Get your pants on. What is that? I'll save my pants till last. It's not like a chicken leg at Sunday lunch. I'll save that bit I'll save it to last. It's my special treat. No, it's your pants, mate. I don't want to see your pendulous collection of doom in my eye line as I'm trying to get changed. It's deeply upsetting. And let's be perfectly honest, when it comes to design awards, nobody is going to be giving any TED Talks on the bloke that designed testicles, right? I mean, that would have failed at every level. I know what I'll do. I've got to create something that is going to be ultimately responsible for quite a lot of procreation. Oh, what will it look like? A majestic hill with a lovely valley and some lakes? Nope, these testicles are going to look like the worst things you ever saw in your life. I'm going to make these darn things look so unattractive, you won't know. Believe me, they won't even be fully straight. They won't even be even. Not fully. I'm going to make these things just stand out as the last thing in the world you want to look at. So the putting your pant instruction comes with a respectful request, but also, I think, an aesthetic one as well. I really don't want to go gonad bound in the morning, thank you. 0344 499 1000.
when you look at the number of rapes that are being reported, it's hugely gone up. To make these points in the toxic environment we now live in, you've got to give people data. So they can't turn around and go, you're making this up because you hate brown people, you're making this up because you're a xenophobe, you're making this up because you're an Islamophobe. You need to actually say to people, here are the statistics. The Telegraph did a fantastic story where they had used prison population data from the year before. The only data available, women and girls are far less safe in Europe now as a direct consequence of mass immigration, and we have provided the evidence.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, Talk, 23 minutes after 3 o'clock on Talk. Dan in Banstead says all it took to solve the migrant crisis was the civil service to stop sitting on their hands and helping government in power, which, if I were a cynical man, is probably the party they vote for, says Dan. Ian says still wouldn't vote for Labour, or Labour, as he puts it, regardless of whether they're going to solve the immigration problem. Well, I mean, they're not going to solve it. It was just fascinating to see their kind of tiny moment in the spotlight of these videos they released. This was, I think the phrase low-hanging fruit has been used a couple of times to describe the kind of people that they have deported. Many on the list anyway from the previous government. Some were volunteers, some were paid, etc. If the Labour Party wanted to take on Reform UK on this particular subject, they would need to be doing that every single day for the next 5 years. You could have the weekends off. And then people will go, right, this reform thing, nice try, Nige, we were with you, but the Labour lot have gone and done it. And of course, you know full well, it's not in their DNA, it's not going to happen. Mark's in Manchester. What have you got for us, Mark? Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Ian. I just want to have a quick chat about reform.
Yes.
Nigel Farage. I just think that I think if they don't do a deal, then we are going to struggle, or they're going to struggle to get power, to get Labour out. And I think if they amalgamated, maybe Nigel Farage actually led the Tory party, I think that could be a winning formula. But I think it depends on Trump. I think if Trump looks good 2 years down the line, and his economic policies and everything else, I think that'll reflect well on Nigel. I think if Kemi Badenoch keeps flatlining, then that'll look poor on the Tories. And I think it may push them together. I just think the sell to the people who actually do the work is going to be the difficult bit.
Do you reckon, though,
the very, very hard bit.
Because at the moment, Mark, as you know, you've got Kemi saying, no way, Nigel going, no way. I mean, we're 4 years away from an election, 4.5 years.
Correct.
That could change, couldn't it?
It could change. I think it's timing. I think a lot depends on the 2 years. I think a lot depends on Trump and his economic policies because, I'm not a fan of Nigel Farage, but I'm a Tory with a Conservative with a small C. I couldn't vote for them last time. In fact, I couldn't vote for anyone. I just voted for none of the above.
Yep.
But, I do think that there's enough people that if there was an amalgamation, if Trump did well, it reflects well on Nigel Farage. Kemi Badenoch flatlines. Power is a very, very attractive thing. And I think it could force them together. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
I like it. I like your thinking. Mark, thank you very much indeed. They're both... And yesterday when we did a phone-in on this, loads of former Tories, now Reform supporters, were incandescent at the idea that there might be a deal with the Tories. The Tories have toxified themselves so sufficiently and so fully that it's almost as if there's no way back. They just... And, I did say this, didn't I? I think last week, and I'd never really thought about it. By the way, today is 50 years to the day since Margaret Thatcher became the leader of the Conservative Party. I was listening to some old clips We should have played them, actually. It never occurred to me to tell the guys to dig these out, but there's a lovely one of a reporter saying to Margaret Thatcher, Mrs Thatcher, it's one thing having a woman MP, but do you really think the country could have a woman leader? Just half a century. How that time has changed. There is also a clip of her saying she doesn't think there'll be a female Prime Minister in her lifetime, but she's not arguing against the idea of it. She's just saying, I don't think it will happen. She became that person. What I find interesting in terms of the analogy that I was going to make about Thatcher is that it may well be the only answer to what has happened to the Tories, which would mean there's no way back, and it's this. In the United States, where we had the run-up to who would be the Republican candidate, Ron DeSantis and various others, all of whom got sort of dropped out at various points. And then Trump, of course, said, yep, I'm going to go for it, and he became the man. But one of the things that came up consistently, because a lot of Republicans were looking for the Reagan character. Where's the Reagan character? Apple pie and the farm in the Deep South, you know, good quality values, all of that. And they said it's gone. I remember talking to Greg Swenson, you know, a friend of the show who comes on to talk a lot from Republicans abroad, saying, you know, there is no Reagan era to be relived. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. And there are lots of Republicans wanting it back, but it's gone. Now, we can explore the reasons as to why it's gone. I'm sure there's many. But I think the Thatcher thing is a similar... I think it's a similar thing. I think we're in a similar place with that. And I think Labour, by the way, have also got a similar problem. I don't think there is lots of Tories, some of the old boys, but some of the young ones as well. You know, when William Hague was 16 and he gave that speech at the Tory party conference when Mrs Thatcher was Prime Minister, and he was literally sounded like he still sounds and looked a bit like he still looks, way ahead of his time in terms of age. That kind of, you know, the old school, you know, Thatcherism, which comes to both ends of the spectrum. You've got the old people who want it, and the young people, some of the young Tories go, yeah, Thatcher, she's great, even though you weren't alive when she was around. Not that that matters, by the way. So a similar thing there. I think there is no appetite for conservatism in its conventional Thatcherite sense. So people are looking elsewhere. And do you know what? I think the same thing with the Labour Party. I think people went there out of panic. They voted because there was nowhere else to go. That's how they felt. I sense that many of those Labour MPs we have now are not Blairites. They're not people who wanted a Blair thing. A lot of them I still think are Corbynites. I think they are more happy in the old kind of 70s socialist skin. Again, they don't remember it, many of them too young. But so, you know, reform, populism, which I don't know why that's a pejorative, but apparently it is, being popular and saying popular things, I think is the order of the day. And I think that's where we're at. And if you want to be popular, by the way, how would you fancy 25,000 quid in your back pocket? Because you could win a chance to be in this situation to win £25,000. Have a listen.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Good luck. Someone's got to win it. 25k. We're going to talk about an anti-vegan backlash in a moment. Apparently, Britain has fallen back in love with meat. Did you ever fall out of it? Some people go a bit veggie. Vegans, a little bit more of a step if you've done it. We'll talk to Sam Calvert from the Vegan Society in just a couple of moments. You might learn something, meat eaters, including myself. Stand by. Coming next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just gone 3:30. Here's the thing. Meat appears to be back on the menu with veganism in decline. I genuinely thought it was the other way around. Health-conscious Gen Zers are shifting their eating habits due to the cost of living and changing perceptions of what is a healthy diet. A new survey has found that 19% of 18 to 24-year-olds in the UK actually increased their meat intake in 2024 compared to 16% who reduced their consumption. What is going on over there at Vegan HQ? Let's get a word from Sam Calvert, spokesperson for the Vegan Society. Afternoon to you, Sam.
Good afternoon.
I thought it became illegal to be a vegan when we came out of the EU. Is that not true? Have I been given misinformation?
Actually, we found that we did a survey at the end of last year, November 2024, and we found, contrary to this survey, which also seems to have taken place in 2024, that veganism had grown. In fact, we found that there were that 3% of people in Great Britain were either vegan or plant-based, so following a predominantly vegan diet. And that was particularly found to be the case in the sort of 16 to 44-year age group, where it was much more popular. So I think in terms of people being vegan, we're not finding that to be that much of a problem. It's more that I think there's been a bit of a rebalancing in the market. We saw lots of new products coming onto the market. In fact, the market was probably saturated with vegan products at one point. And I think what we're seeing now is a kind of rebalancing. Some of those have done really well and gone on to be favourites. Others that were perhaps poorer quality or more expensive have gone by the wayside. But that's kind of what you would expect.
So it's almost a recalibration of things. I mean, I agree with you, to be honest, Sam. I was really surprised to think it had gone down. I meet more people, you know, when I was a kid, nobody knew a vegan. You might have known the odd vegetarian, but it was really unusual to meet somebody who cut the whole thing out of their diet. Now, I can think of lots of people I know that have gone that way. Some have tried it, some are still vegetarians, but it's not any longer, it's not even a talking point, is it, in some respects? You know, you used to go back in the day when you were, if you chose a meat-free diet in particular, you'd go into a restaurant, there'd be nothing on a menu for you. Absolutely no. You've got a salad, you know, a salad, maybe a bit of pasta every now and again. And even that, of course, is a bit iffy if you're a vegan. So the choice has exploded. I thought the number of people going vegan had exploded. I have to say, I still eat meat. I think most meat eaters have a bit of an envy of vegans, to be honest, because if you're enjoying the food just as much, but it's healthier, then some might say, well, that's the preferable way to go. The trouble is, are you still eating stuff that tastes like balsa wood?
I don't think that's true anymore at all. There's an awful lot of choice on the market. I mean, some of it is down to how much do you want to cook for yourself. If you want to, then one of the cheapest ways to eat. I know this particular survey identified the cost of vegan products, and it's certainly true to say that something like a vegan cheese would perhaps be more expensive, or a vegan meat alternative. But if you're cooking from scratch using things like lentils and pulses, beans, they're some of the cheapest things that you can cook with. And you can create a whole range of plant-based dishes that would replace exactly a meat dish. So you can have a vegan chili or a vegan curry just as easily as a meat-based one. In fact, probably more easily. Often our cooking takes less time.
Well, indeed. One of the things that somebody did say to me recently, who's a kind of lifelong vegan, was that he was disappointed that companies, obviously, I don't want to use the phrase jumping on the bandwagon, but clearly going, oh, look, there's a bit of a vegan appetite out there, so we'll make some stuff. He was concerned that there were too many products coming onto the market that, yes, they were vegan, but that didn't mean they were healthy. And some were stuffed with sugars and salts in order to kind of give it some kind of taste. But actually, what was in it wasn't particularly good for you.
Yeah, on the whole, I think a vegan product would probably still be healthier than its meat alternative. It's, you know, likely to be sort of lower in fat, but it could have quite a bit of sugar or salt in it. It's very much a case of looking at the ingredient list. Our advice really would be to use those alternative products as in a limited way. That they're great to add variety to what you're cooking, but if they're, you know, if ready-made food is the basis of your diet, whether you're a meat eater or a vegan, then it's probably not going to be the healthiest, because you can't control things like the level of salt and the level of sugar. You can read ingredients and try and choose lower ones, but you're not completely in control of that. If you cook from scratch at home, if you've got the time to do that, then you're much more in control of your diet, and you can have a really healthy diet and a very cheap one.
Shine a bit of light for us then, Sam, if you could. What does a slap-up meal look like to you?
Oh, personally, my preferences are probably around sort of curry or Thai food. So I guess I really like those sort of international dishes. And, you know, my Christmas Day choice would always be, you know, having, you know, vegan curry and so on Christmas Day rather than a traditional turkey. Or trying to replicate that with a vegan equivalent. Really, there's a huge variety of dishes out there now. Whatever kind of cookery you prefer, it's available as a vegan alternative.
Does it bother
and it's
you?
Much easier to eat out.
Indeed. Does it bother you sitting next to a meat eater?
I think it's a difficult thing for vegans. Some dishes are much more distressing than others in terms of how they appear and how they smell. I think it's a very individual thing. There are vegans who won't sit down with people eating meat. They just choose not to do so, and they feel that's very strongly. And at the other end of the spectrum, there are vegans who would say it's a personal thing. What I eat is up to me, and what you eat is up to you. So I think it is a very personal issue.
Fair point. Sam, thank you. Great to have you on. Sam Calvert, spokesperson for the Vegan Society. Did you ever go vegan? I've got a couple of mates who were the last people I would have thought of that would have gone vegetarian. Because that can be tricky, but not as tricky as it was. And if you eat, what's it called if you just eat fish and not meat? Pescatarian, that's it. If you do that, then I get, a stir fry and a bit of old salmon on the top of it takes you about 10 minutes to cook and is really quite healthy. I understand that. And I also increasingly understand that, you don't really want to be eating a fillet steak every single day of the week. That's not particularly healthy. But, chicken is good. I don't even know, is there a moral thing about chicken? Are they even really a thing, chickens? They're not really an animal, are they? There's just loads of them around. I don't think they exist in the same... They're not like a cow or a pig, or a chicken is a chicken, right? It's food stuff. Chicken is like having OXO in your cupboard. I mean, even if you had a live one. I think most people like a bit of chook. Nothing wrong with that. But if you've gone vegan, even though you thought you never would, how are you getting on? Because that is a big ask. When you start to think of cheese and butter and milk and everything that's got to go from it, then you are in it's a high-stakes game, I think. Brendan's in Hartlepool. Back to immigration, Brendan. What have you got for us? Hi.
I like the high-stakes game. Was that a pun intended?
Did I really say that? I did, didn't I?
You did. Right, sorry.
Well spotted.
The Labour Party with their videos. I don't believe any of them. They're not. They're lying.
No, Yvette Cooper's the new Donald Trump, Brendan. Didn't you know?
Well, she dyed her hair blue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, listen. They've deported less than have come in over illegally. Yeah. So how do they know they're illegal? If they're letting them, the land, that's an illegal act. Who are these? These people that they've somehow discovered they're illegal by some other way. How do they do it? It's just a complete con.
Well, yes, and it's a complete mess as well. And the numbers are so big, Brendan, that even if you did have a government, if Reform UK were voted in tomorrow, where would they even start?
Well, they'd start by having somebody stood on the beach at Dover. No,
yeah, they've already said they would absolutely deal with that. I wonder about all the hotels that are everywhere. They're in the northeast, they're in the southwest. They're everywhere. I mean, what's the deal there? How much longer can that go on for? You just keep stuffing people in hotels.
Give them some nice tents and some nice wool, nice warm sleeping bags. Because we've got squaddies on the street in tents and sleeping bags.
100%. You see, but that breaches the human rights, doesn't it? So you're not allowed to do that.
Well, don't they lose their human rights once they step ashore into an illegal situation?
You might sort of think so. If you're, but
I'm sure Mr. Trump would say that. So Madam Trump or Madam Balls, as she should. Why does she not use her proper married name? Why do they all do that? They don't use the husband's names, do they?
Who are you talking about?
Yvette Cooper, isn't she Ed Balls?
Yes, she is. Sorry, yes. Sorry.
Why doesn't she call herself Yvette Balls?
Would you?
Well, if I'm married,
you got a choice of Cooper or Balls? I mean, what are you going to go for?
Yeah, sorry, you're right. You're exactly right. I don't know. Anyway, it's just a way. No, but I just think they're trying to put reform off the scent. They're trying to make people think we are.
Yeah, well, it's going to fail because I reckon this is the first and last time we'll see robust action from Yvette Cooper and co.
One thing before I go, can I ask you? You might know this. Is the king allowed to dissolve Parliament if he thinks the government who's running it are making such a mess of it? Can he dissolve Parliament?
I might be wrong about this. I might be wrong about this. I think in theory he could. And in theory, there's quite a lot of things the king could do, but no longer do. So he could,
it'd be
but
a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, I think so. I think in theory, he could just get on that balcony at Buck House with a megaphone and go, "This lot are rubbish. We're having another election." And wouldn't we all pay to see that? Man, can you imagine? I'd love to wake up and that's the top story. That would sort out our 3-hour show.
It certainly would. Anyway,
Definitely.
listen, it's good talking to you. Thank you
too, Brendan. As ever, thank you, Brendan in Hartlepool. This comes in from Sally. If you're upset about men with their bits out in changing rooms, imagine what it would be like for a woman in a changing room. You see, the reason I mentioned all that stuff about men in changing rooms, I've got something to add to that, by the way, in a second, was specifically because of women having to experience, blokes in changing rooms. I'm really worried about the education of what it means to be a woman. I thought the government were meant to be doing something about violence against women and girls and not allowing them to be bullied by a man who says he's a woman, and the NHS. Sally, you're absolutely spot on. And this is the government. This is where they get that... that kind of contradiction in their thinking, because they want to be we're all about the violence in Estella Creasy and people like that who talk about violence of women and girls, and Jess Phillips, and all, that's brilliant, great work done there. Thank you guys for that. However, simultaneously, not really acknowledging the changing room dilemma. What I was just going to briefly add and I hope as a result, I've had quite a lot of tweets from people commenting on my analysis of men's inability to put their pants on when they're getting changed in a gym. It, for some reason, is relegated to everything goes on. I think people put their shoes on before they put their pants on. You've been for a swim, you've had your shower, dry yourself off, first thing, your pants. For some reason, that very simple message is lost on quite a lot of members of the male population. Can I just add this? Hairdryers in gym changing rooms, it's a hairdryer, okay? It's not a bottom dryer. Okay, it's not meant to do your little dangly bits. That's not the point of it. And yet every day there's always somebody, there's always someone, and this is the worst bit. You see a bloke who's not just, he's doing his thing, he's under his armpits, he's giving it large there, doing the old chest, straight down to the old, he's down there, round the back. Then he sticks his leg on top of the kind of shelf bit in order to get a good old going under there. I do not want to see somebody going body bound with a Remington 2000, thank you. It's a flipping hairdryer, not a little what's-it. But that happens quite a lot as well. You see, it wouldn't happen if you put your pants on first. But don't be drying your hair. My other half, she said this, she saw this in a female changing room. There was a woman drying her hair, stark naked, next to her. And she said it just looked a bit odd and felt a little bit odd. Don't walk around in your birthday suit, right? I mean, it's really simple. It's not... I don't think anybody wants to see it. I don't think it's necessary. And I don't know whether it's a kind of part of a male lizard brain that you think it's somehow a testosterone-fueled spectacle that... It's not even bragging. We're not talking about blokes that are some kind of Adonis walking. In fact, often the very opposite. And maybe I could just about cope with it if that was the case. But it's not even that. I don't know what it is. It doesn't happen when you're a kid. You know, when you're a kid, you want to get changed very quickly. When you're a teenage boy, you can't get changed fast enough, right? And then at some point, this weird percentage, this small contingent of your fellow males decide that the best way to behave in a changing room is to display your little baby Yoda. And I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the best. I don't think that's necessarily what we should be doing. Why don't they put it? This is how much it got to me. I was even thinking of printing some stickers off and putting super glue on the back on the back of the shower cubicle to say, when you have finished here, please put your pants on. And then the gym people would have gone, did we put those up, or did somebody? Who put the stickers up? Who put the willy stickers up in the? Nobody would know. And I was hoping they'd assume, like, some cleaner in the changing room would assume head office had been down there and a very important person had lobbed up the kind of winkle warning on the back of the door in the shower. I don't know. Human behaviour is lost on me in all manner of very strange ways. It's odd. I saw a man in a sleeping position on a train today on the floor reading his book, but he was about like 75 and there were loads of spare seats. Well, were you a snake? What's wrong with you? A cat? What's wrong with you, man? Folk do weird things, right? 0344 499 1000. Our lines are on. We'll go back to more of your calls in a couple of moments here on Talk.
This is going to go on for months and months and months. If anything, this is, as I said, it's awakened a sort of fire in the belly of farmers. And that's what you can see there today. And look, did you see, Mike, how many of those people are young people?
Yeah.
Because it's about them. At the end of the day, all of this is about them. And we had some amazing speakers, including one very young girl who's dreamed of doing this. This is her dream. And so we were there to fight for her.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It is Talk. And do you know, I haven't even got my headphones in, which only if you're watching in vision, you will understand the conundrum that... No, this is a first world problem, by the way. The conundrum presenters have to go through if you take these headphones. They're like little headbuds, sort of thing Chris Martin wears, but looks cool. You haven't lived until you've seen Kevin O'Sullivan try and get a pair of these things in his lug holes. It's believe me, there should be a Netflix show just called Kev's Buds, where we discuss how Kevin O'Sullivan struggles with them. I'm normally pretty slick, but I missed it there. Let's go back to your calls. Ian is down in London. Ian, what have you got for us? Hi.
Oh, hold on. Right. Have you got your earbuds in?
I've got them in just. Yeah, I only just about made it, though.
Good. Basically, I'd like to say, going back on something you were talking about 3 o'clock with the business in Gaza and everything else.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it seems that the terrorists have actually learnt how to use the media better.
Interesting. Go on.
Right, because you take it on Saturday when we saw those distressing sights of those 3 hostages being released, everybody for about 10, 20 minutes felt sorry for them. Within half an hour, they're already showing, like Gaza, oh, this one's come out of prison and he's sort of malnourished and this and that. And then they showed the guy that was actually really suffering from cancer, and they showed him and everything else. But they're clever even then because they know that Trump, bless him, sort of wants to back Israel and say, go in and do that. But as one of, I think your guest said, there's nothing left to bomb. And if they went in there, they'd lose even more. It just seems to be that they're really learning how to manipulate the actual sort of thing. It's like, you know, even going back to it the other day, there was this whole thing with these Labour politicians and everything else going on a march through London. They weren't going to the Israeli embassy you would do if you were going against Israel. Where do they go? They go to the synagogues, right? But they say they're not anti-Semites. Well, why do you go to a synagogue if you've got the actual annoyance with a country?
And where are the... I mean, I know this is going over old territory, Ian, but, you know, where are those protests when it comes to, you know, various other human rights abuses, particularly against women and other minorities? You know, where are those people outside the Chinese embassy for the Uyghur Muslims that are suffering horrendously under the Chinese regime? You never see them.
No, you don't. And the whole thing is that the main, like, look, bless you, talk radio have been fantastic, right? And you and Julia and Mike and all the rest, you know, Jeremy and which one, the Sullivan you talk about with
Kev.
Like, Jeff.
Kev.
Kev, that's it, Kev. You're trying to mess me up.
I was trying not to. I was doing my best. I was gunning you on there, Ian. Come on, Ian, you can do it. There's only one name missing there.
That's right. But basically, you've done the right thing, but they've really learnt how to manipulate, and it makes it the whole way. And really, you know, and it just shows you with Keith Starlin, he doesn't do nothing. He doesn't do nothing. And the same with David Lammy and all. They're not actually sort of coming out and saying, look, we're being taken for a ride here.
No, and they're also, and they're not people who, they don't really have that in them as politicians, which is why I was saying earlier, as you might have heard, Ian, that, you know, that I think, you know, the Conservatives and Labour as brands are kind of done because we don't want those sort of politicians anymore. You know, we want politicians that have something more than just a smart degree and a basic idea of right and wrong, which is where they think, or what they think is all they need.
Some life experience. They're missing out one thing.
Go on.
Ian. They're missing out one word: charisma.
It's spot on. Ian, on that point, we have to stop because we've hit the clock. Thank you. Charisma is absolutely right. You've got to be a bit showbiz in politics.
I bought you a present.
Have you, love?
Hasn't hit the publishers yet. If you're watching on screen, it's a book by Kemi Badenoch, highlights from my first 100 days as the Tory party leader.
Is that a real book?
I'm going to flick through inside.
Perfect for a long holiday, a real page turner, says Reform. That's not...
He loves that, Ian. There's 100 pages and
there
it's
it
got
is.
Absolutely jack in it. He loves that. He loves that. How are you?
Where did this come from, by the way?
I can't tell you. On the grounds that I'll have to
highlight some. There it is.
I find it astonishing on the day that Badenoch says a deal with Farage is for the birds. Reform aren't talking about a deal. The Tories are talking about a deal. The Tories are denying a deal. Somebody said to me yesterday, if Reform grows by 2% a year for the next 4 years, they'll form a majority government. There's probably a 50% chance that could happen. I listened to your last caller. The Tories and Labour have had the chances, I think. I could be wrong.
I just think the appetite for that kind of politics has changed as well.
Yes,
I don't think it's just about, you know, we were making the example in America where a lot of Republicans were going, we want the Reagan thing back, the Reagan era, and newer Republicans are going, doesn't exist anymore. That doesn't exist. No. And I think the whole Thatcher thing, 50 years today, she became leader. I think it's respectfully to her, I think people want something different now.
Completely agree. We spent yesterday talking about how this country's so far on its backside that you can stay in this country by grabbing a lawyer paid by the taxpayer to convince a judge that your son can't leave because of chicken nuggets.
Yes.
Today, a British Pakistani paedophile escaped deportation because the Caribbean sun would have been too